Li remembered how monstrous beasts had been used to murder his parents, and how powerful people had forced him into crushing debt. He recalled how they had tried to kill him in the same cruel way, treating his life as worthless and easily erased. Anger and hatred filled his heart as he questioned why he should die quietly like an ant while scumbags decided his fate. In that despair, he awakened a burning resolve to take revenge and reclaim everything that had been stolen from him. He vowed that all the scum and beasts who destroyed his family would be hunted down and shown no mercy. In his mind, the weak ant was no longer meant to be crushed, because even ants could gnaw through thrones. On July 1st, the revenge of the weak began, and from that day on, shadows started to rise and devour everything in their path. Li remembered how the man coldly told him that his parents' death did not erase the debt, and that a father's debt must be repaid by the child, leaving everything on his shoulders. He argued back that his parents had died mining for those people and that he should have been compensated instead. In his memories, someone once encouraged him by saying that if he could succeed in awakening, people like them might still have a bit of hope, even if the chance was only 1 in 1,000. That thought filled him with bitterness as he questioned why he should risk his life when others were too afraid to try, and why all the suffering had to fall on him just because he was weak. Anger burst out as he rejected the idea that the weak were destined to die obediently. At that moment, a strange screen suddenly appeared before his eyes, showing a system binding with an unknown life form and analyzing data. He recalled his own identity as Li, an experienced other-dimensional operative who wore a hazmat suit every day and risked his life entering another dimension to mine energy stones. A supervisor once praised his work, and said that at this pace he might repay his parents' debt within a year, and that if he kept going for several more years he might even afford a small apartment. Li agreed on the surface and promised to keep working hard, while secretly cursing their greed and swearing to leave once the debt was cleared. He understood clearly that radiation in other dimensions carried a 1 in 1,000 chance to awaken an ordinary person, but it was also deadly, and no one would choose such work unless life itself forced them. Later, he overheard others pointing him out, mentioning how his parents had died in an accident 3 years ago, and how he received no compensation but was instead left burdened with debt. Li heard others talking about how the NG group had insisted that his parents caused a huge loss that year, calling him pitiful while also mocking him as weak. Some said that if they were in his place, they would risk everything to make the company pay, while others laughed and said that taking lives was pointless and that money was more useful. Those words sank into Li's heart and made him think that weakness was not always born from a person, but from a broken society and a world that had gone mad. Soon the work began, and someone shouted that everything was ready, only to curse loudly when a collapse warning appeared, brushing it off as nothing more than a small tremor. Others grew uneasy, saying they had never heard of earthquakes in another dimension, and wondering if monsters had appeared. Fear spread as people murmured that this zone once had aliens and that they were far more dangerous than beasts, urging everyone to stop working. A supervisor angrily shut them down and insisted the area had been cleared years ago, threatening them to keep quiet. Before the fear could settle, a monster suddenly appeared and killed the supervisor, leaving everyone frozen in shock as they realized an alien had returned. Panic erupted as monsters chased the workers, cutting them down as they fled. Li understood that running was almost useless since they were far from the dimensional rift and far beyond what human strength could handle. Some people jumped onto a truck and screamed for it to start, while others begged to be taken along, but a monster grabbed the vehicle, tore it open, and smashed it into the ground. Li noticed that the monsters focused on the people in the vehicle, and moments later an explosion rocked the area, flames engulfing one of the creatures and making it scream in pain. From this, Li quickly realized that fire was their weakness. When another monster rushed toward him, he grabbed a burning wooden torch and waved it forward. The creature stopped in fear and backed away, confirming his guess. With urgency, Li called out to the others and told them that these monsters were afraid of fire. Li recalled how 10 years ago gates had suddenly appeared across the world, allowing insectoids, beasts, and aliens from other dimensions to pour into Earth. Only those awakened by radiation, known as advanced ones, had the power to fight back, close the gates, and lead humanity into a new era of dimensional exploration and energy development. Ordinary people like him were left struggling just to survive, powerless against the monsters and often unable even to escape. As fear spread, one man worried that the burning torch in his hands would not last much longer. Li quickly led everyone toward the storage room, knowing there was gasoline inside, and suggested using fire to block the entrance and hold out until rescue arrived. The group formed a tight circle and retreated carefully while pouring gasoline along the path, then ignited it to create a wall of flames that set a charging monster ablaze. Grateful survivors thanked Lee, admitting that they would have died outside without him and promising to help him if he ever needed it. Inside the storage room, Lee noticed an ancient-looking statue, and someone explained that it had been found deep in the mine and secretly stored there, likely meant to be sold on the black market. Nearby, another worker urgently contacted headquarters, reporting that Sector 7 mine was under alien attack and begging for rescue. The reply finally came through, telling them to stay alive for now and informing them that rescue forces would arrive in about 2 hours. The men panicked when they heard that rescue would take 2 hours, begging for help to arrive sooner before the call was cut off. Fear spread quickly as they realized their suit power supplies would only last another hour and a half, and some cried out that they still had families waiting for them at home. Desperation drove them to suggest breaking through with a vehicle, believing that even if only one person escaped, it was better than waiting to die. Lee silently worried about the low power left in his suit, and could only hope that rescue would come in time. Soon, one man stepped forward and coldly told everyone that their power would not last until rescue, and that someone had to be sacrificed. He pointed at Lee, saying that Lee had no family, was buried in debt, and that living was nothing but suffering for him anyway. Before Lee could properly resist, the man struck him and mocked his weakness, even suggesting that exposing him to radiation might trigger an awakening. Others echoed this cruel idea, claiming that if Lee awakened, he might even become a hero who saved them all. Lee, filled with rage, cursed them as fools and swore that if he ever awakened, the first thing he would do was kill them. His words were met with laughter, as they mocked the tiny chance of awakening and took his suit battery, leaving him coughing and barely standing. They then began arguing over who should be forced to try awakening next. Chaos broke out when a young man tried to protect his own battery and rushed toward a vehicle, shouting that if they were going to die, they would die together. Others screamed for him to stop, realizing too late that he had knocked over the fire barrier at the entrance. With the flames disrupted, the alien rushed inside, plunging the shelter into terror. As everything fell apart, Lee bitterly laughed at his fate, feeling as if even the silent ancient statue nearby was mocking him. As chaos spread, a monster suddenly lunged at Lee and attacked him, filling his mind with pain and despair as he questioned why he had to endure all of this simply because he was weak. As the creature pierced his body, memories flooded back, mixing with the agony. He remembered being chased away by relatives who mocked him, telling him to get lost and saying his parents were dead and no one owed him anything. He recalled landlords throwing him out for lacking rent and debt collectors shouting that his parents' death did not erase what was owed, treating him as a burden that needed to be cast aside. His thoughts drifted to the moment he tried to investigate how his parents had really died, only to be crushed by powerful men who mocked his efforts. They seized the whistleblower letters he had sent out and twisted the truth, claiming his parents had violated procedures and caused the accident themselves. Not only did they refuse compensation, they forced millions in losses onto his shoulders, leaving him drowning in debt. He remembered being kicked to the ground while being told that accepting a small payout would have been easier, and that insisting on the truth had ruined him. In the end, his debt was taken over and turned into a cruel trap with heavy interest and strict deadlines, enforced through violence and fear. The only path shown to him was to become a dimensional miner, a job that risked death every day, yet was presented as the only way he might ever repay what he owed. As the monster's attack continued, all those memories blended together, forming the source of Li Yi's hatred, despair, and unyielding will to resist. In the present moment, Li Yi accepted that death awaited him either way, yet he refused to die quietly and swore he would not make it easy for anyone. Even as a weak man, he rejected the idea that weakness meant accepting death. In a burst of defiance, he bit the monster, forcing it to release him, and felt disgusted by its foul smell. A strange shadow mocked him, saying his struggle was nothing more than useless resistance before death. Li retorted that at least he had fought back once, unlike the broken statue that had been smashed so easily. The shadow then claimed that it was the only one who could save him and demanded control over his body. Li refused fiercely, declaring that he would rather die than be controlled by such a thing. The shadow mocked his pride and denied him the right to refuse. At that instant, another monster attacked, but Li awakened a shadow power that crushed the creature with overwhelming force. He coldly mocked the monster for stepping on his statue and made it clear that he held grudges. With swift violence, he silenced the creature and killed it, once again noting the disgusting smell it left behind. Turning his attention to the remaining men, his killing intent became clear. The others panicked and shouted his name, threatening to report him if he dared touch them. As dark power surged through Li Yi's body, the shadow sneered at the pathetic humans and calmly asked Li Yi what he would do if his body were returned to him. The remaining men begged Li Yi to let them go, claiming they had only been trying to survive and even arguing that without their cruelty, he would never have awakened. They insisted that although they had treated him harshly, the result was that he had gained power too. Li Yi coldly replied that by their logic he should be thanking them, then calmly said he would indeed help them. Instead, he killed one of them without hesitation and took their suit batteries, then turned his gaze toward the others. One man cried that he had done nothing, but Li Yi showed no sympathy and told them that the remaining batteries now belonged to them. The shadow mocked Li Yi for his useless pity and warned that it would only bring trouble. Li Yi angrily shut it down, refusing to be ordered around. The shadow sneered and said it wanted to see if Li Yi would still be so tough when facing death again. At that moment, many aliens appeared outside the cave, far more than expected. The shadow demanded control of Li Yi's body, saying that without its power he was nothing and could never handle so many enemies. Li Yi refused once more and dodged the incoming attacks on his own, surprised by how light his body felt and how much his speed and reactions had improved. An alien mocked him for being weak even after binding with the shadow, but Li Yi silenced it with a punch. As he fought, he realized his strength had grown far beyond before, though bare hands were not enough to deal real damage. In response to his will, a dark dagger formed from shadow in his hand, fitting him perfectly. With it, he slashed down the alien and discovered that he could truly kill them. With growing confidence, Li Yi cut through the remaining aliens one by one, fully realizing that he now had the power to fight back. When the last enemy fell, he collapsed to the ground, breathing heavily as exhaustion washed over him. At that moment, a screen appeared before his eyes, announcing that his advancement was successful and confirming Li Yi of the human race had reached rank E. Li Yi lay unconscious in a medical room while a nurse checked him carefully and found no wounds or illness, yet could not understand why he had not woken up. The doctor explained that advanced ones often fell into deep exhaustion after awakening and that their bodies needed time to adapt to the new level, so they decided to wait and observe. After they left, the shadow appeared and complained about being bound to a human of such a low rank, mocking the fact that Li Yi was only E-class. Even so, it admitted that it was strange and interesting that an E-class could trigger the shadow system and even shape-shift on the first attempt, though it believed such a body could not handle even a tiny part of its true power. Li Yi soon regained awareness and questioned the shadow about its identity, and why it kept clinging to him. The shadow arrogantly revealed itself as an ancient supreme being of an entropic clan that once ruled many dimensions, demanding Li Yi hand over his body and promising rewards after it reclaimed its lost throne. Li Yi dismissed these claims in his mind, finding them absurd and refusing to give up his body to something dark and unpleasant. The shadow grew furious at his rejection and declared that offering his body was the only value of his existence. Li Yi became deeply uneasy and confused, wondering why the shadow was so obsessed with him and whether provoking it would bring disaster. He considered many grim possibilities and feared being dragged into ruin if he angered it, yet he also knew he could never agree to such a demand. Trapped between resistance and caution, Li Yi struggled to decide how to face the terrifying presence bound to him. The shadow finally lost patience and raged at Li Yi, cursing his own fate for ending up bound to an E-class human after sacrificing so much in the past. It declared that Li Yi had 3 days to reach D-class and threatened to erase him completely if he failed. Confused, Li Yi realized he was no longer in the hospital and questioned where he was. The shadow explained that they were inside a gate of an otherworldly prison, an E-class trial called the Insect Nest that members of its clan could only enter once in their lives. Because of the possession, Li Yi had refreshed the trial attempt, and the shadow system would now draw knowledge directly from its memories whether he liked it or not. Li Yi activated the shadow system and formed a dagger, moving quickly as he attacked a spider-like monster and noticed its speed and blind spot. He blocked its counterattack and rushed forward again, but none of his strikes caused real harm. The shadow mocked him for relying only on brute force, while Li stubbornly refused its guidance and continued fighting his own way. As the battle dragged on, Li grew frustrated when repeated slashes failed to find a weak point, until the monster struck back and smashed him into the wall. While the shadow insulted him for being weak, Li noticed green fluid spilling from the creature and realized it was the monster's blood. In that moment, clarity struck him as he finally understood that he had found its weakness. When the spider monster attacked, Li challenged it, determined to prove who the real weakling was. As he slashed with his dagger, he aimed to break one of its legs, knowing that with the front leg gone, it would be much easier to strike its weak point. He realized, however, that he needed a stronger weapon, so he formed a large spear from dark mana and pierced it straight into the spider monster's body, targeting its vulnerable abdomen. With a final strike, he killed the creature and shouted in triumph that he had won. The shadow mocked him for being out of breath after killing only a single E-rank armored guardian, but Lee felt a sudden surge of power rushing through him. A screen appeared showing that his breakthrough progress had increased slightly, and the shadow explained that it was an energy stone, capable of sometimes boosting ability levels. Lee understood it as an experience pack and sensed that something else was approaching, though he could not see what it was. The shadow suggested that Lee try using his shadow eye, explaining that by gathering shadow energy into his eyes, he could activate the skill. Lee activated shadow eye at level 1 and managed to dodge a series of fast attacks, surprised at how quickly the enemies were moving. He struggled to see them clearly, and the shadow told him it was not the skill that was broken but that he was simply too weak. Determined, Lee focused harder, gathering more energy into his eyes. The shadow noted silently that this little E-rank human was already manipulating shadow energy skillfully, making the situation more interesting. Using the knowledge from the shadow system, Lee identified the enemies as blink sword bugs, nicknamed head harvesters, and stinger shooters, which specialized in long-range poison attacks. The shadow praised him for getting used to the knowledge base, while Lee realized that there were far too many enemies to fight head-on and needed to find a good position to avoid being surrounded. Concentrating his mana, he forced the enemies back and prepared for his next move. The shadow was surprised that Lee had awakened the second phase of Shadow Eye already at his E rank. A screen appeared showing that Shadow Eye had reached level 2, granting him the ability to sense every enemy heartbeat as if it were a death knell. While fighting, Lee noticed that the movements of the insectoids had slowed by about half, and he realized that the purple color on their bodies might indicate their weakness. The shadow explained that this was the benefit of reaching stage 2 with the Shadow Eye, allowing him to identify weak points and break through defenses. Lee confirmed that all the insectoids had weak spots underneath, and used his magic technique Shadow Thorn Grand Burial to impale them into the ground and strike upward, causing area damage. He calculated that each attack would only give a small breakthrough progress, but now that he had identified their weak points, he aimed to defeat them all quickly in one strike. He was surprised at how much the level 2 Shadow Eye had boosted his attack accuracy. As he dodged a sudden attack, he saw a warp saberworm moving fast, and the shadow remarked on his quick reactions but poor planning. Lee had transformed his shadow dagger into a whip to strike the worm and successfully killed it while mocking it for trying to jump. More spiders attacked, but Lee skillfully grabbed them with mana strands, pulling them down and controlling the battlefield. With confidence, he commanded all the monsters to come down, preparing to finish them off efficiently. As the battle continued, the shadow admitted that Lee was finally starting to look worthy, even if his movements were still rough. It explained that the gift of the Eye of Shadow greatly enhanced his senses, reactions, strength, and control over shadow energy, but also demanded an enormous amount of mental power in return. Because of this price, Lee had already reached the limit of what his E-rank body could endure. Lee felt his vision growing blurry, yet his heart burned hotter than ever. He had finally gained power meant for revenge, and he refused to fall here. Hatred toward the NG group surged as he remembered how they covered up the truth of his parents' deaths and shamelessly forced him into deadly mining to repay false debts. Even while exhaustion closed in, he slashed at the enemies and swore that just because he had once been ordinary did not mean he would surrender now. With power to change everything at last, he vowed to take revenge, drag those arrogant people down, and make them kneel before his parents' graves in repentance. He sat atop a monster's corpse as shadow energy flared wildly around him. The shadow observed that human hatred was highly compatible with the shadow system and even nourished shadow energy, but warned that the promised time was approaching. It questioned whether Lee truly planned to release all his shadow energy at once, risking total destruction. Lee answered with unwavering resolve that he needed only a little more to break through, and that if becoming stronger required gambling everything he had, he was willing to take that risk. Lee attacked the spiders and pushed them away with heavy mana pressure, barely escaping the danger. Shadow mocked him and casually named him Little D while explaining that the insect nest used to be a beginner trial field for its own race. The strange weapon left behind shocked Lee because it looked like a greatsword but was called a dagger, and Shadow calmly stated that by human standards it should be level A. Li did not argue about its size and instead thought in a practical way, realizing that power was not only about strength but also value, and decided the weapon should be sold. He went to the registration hall first but was stunned when his level was judged as E. A woman explained that although his body stats were good, there was no detectable energy, and records still listed him as a minor, with only a small pay increase for advancement. Shadow explained that human methods could not sense shadow energy at all. Li accepted this calmly and realized that being hidden might actually protect him, even if it made selling equipment harder. The scene later shifted to the black market where shady deals happened openly. Shadow found the place fitting for the shadow system, while others mocked Li for arriving in minor clothes stained with ore dust. Li stayed silent as Shadow looked around at the flashy weapons and gems and mocked humans for decorating metal and calling it divine, feeling a rare moment of pity toward them. A boy rudely chased Li away and mocked him for being a minor, warning that he could not afford anything if he dirted the place. Li calmly questioned whether this was how customers were treated and said he did not even like their items, asking them to bring an appraiser to check the value of his great sword. At that moment Su Qing appeared beside a level D advanced named Zhou Ho, and the boy quickly tried to flatter them. Zhou Ho proudly talked about a sword he had obtained from the Gate of Otherworlds and planned to sell it to buy his girlfriend a car, while the boy excitedly praised the weapon for boosting attack power and being popular among level D fighters. Li called out Su Qing's name, and she briefly remembered how she once mocked him after his parents died, accusing him of wasting his compensation money and becoming a useless loser. In the present, Zhou Ho asked if she knew Li, and she immediately denied it, pretending he was just a fan and claiming that being recognized was normal for someone like her. Zhou Ho then looked down on Li, insulting him as trash and telling him to take his junk elsewhere, before swinging his sword to chase him away. His confidence shattered the moment his sword broke into pieces, leaving him frozen in shock, while Li coldly stated that the real trash was the sword itself. Su Qing panicked and questioned how such a valuable weapon could break so easily, remembering how Zhou Ho had bragged about its strength. Enraged and humiliated, Zhou Ho lost control and attacked Li again, shouting in fury as the situation instantly turned violent. Li sensed the attack was too slow and easily dodged it. Zhou Ho praised his skill but kept attacking without pause, growing more aggressive each time. Li calmly avoided every strike and thought that these moves were far slower than the deadly trials he had faced in the insected nest. Zhou Ho became confused and angry, unable to understand why a minor who was not even E rank could evade a D rank fighter, and he shouted insults, telling Li to crawl back into the mine. Li mocked him in return and trapped Zhou Ho with strands of dark mana, slamming him hard into the ground and humiliating him further. Enraged, Zhou Ho rushed forward again, shouting threats and completely losing his pride. At that moment Supervisor Wang, a D rank, arrived and stopped the fight, questioning whether things had gone too far inside his shop. Su Qing immediately blamed Li, accusing him of breaking Zhou Ho's treasured sword and causing the conflict. Wang calmly asked whether Zhou Ho's weapon had truly been broken by the sword in Li's hand. Li replied that Zhou Ho attacked first and that a broken sword was not his responsibility. Wang then confirmed the situation with Zhou Ho and noted that the weapon Li carried did not seem ordinary. Zhou Ho agreed to follow the usual rule of trading money for the item, and Wang decided to act as mediator. He politely asked Li to hand over the sword for appraisal, and Li calmly passed it to him. Wang felt the sword was extremely heavy and was shocked that Li could lift it so easily, making him suspect that Li might be advanced, so he tried to test him by asking where a minor could get such a weapon. Li calmly pushed back and questioned since when the black market cared about item origins. Wang brushed it off as simple curiosity, and Li claimed he had picked up the sword while mining, which made Wang believe he was just a low-level miner. Wang then judged the sword as tough but without special attributes, saying it was only worth a few hundred, while Zhou Ho's broken weapon would have been worth over 2 million. He proposed a deal where he would buy Li's sword and cover most of the loss, asking Li to compensate Zhou Ho with 2 million instead, presenting it as an act of kindness. Zhou Ho agreed immediately, acting generous under Wang's mediation. Su Qing panicked and complained that Li could never afford such a sum, worrying about the car Zhou Ho had promised her. Zhou Ho casually suggested selling Li's organs to make up the money, and Su Qing quickly accepted the idea as if it were already decided. Li coldly noted that they had everything planned out, and when Wang questioned him, dark mana flared around Li as he warned that he was not the only one with a problem. A man rushed toward Li shouting for him to be crippled, while Wang calmly told Zhou Ho that pointless fighting was a waste of time and suggested going to the tea room to wait. Before they could move, a man was suddenly smashed into the wall, making Wang shout in alarm for him to be careful not to break the merchandise. Li moved like a blur and struck the other men as well, sending them flying one after another. Zhou Ho sneered that mining must have built Li Yi's strength, and Li Yi calmly told him it was his turn. Su Qing watched in shock and questioned when a miner had become so skilled at fighting. Zhou Ho admitted that Li Yi's moves were decent against nobodies, but he still charged forward, shouting that in front of AD rank advanced 1, Li Yi was nothing. Instead, Li Yi struck him and sent him flying. Humiliated and furious, Zhou Ho gathered mana and screamed that no one had ever dared to hit him, vowing to kill Li Yi. Li Yi blocked the attack head-on, and the clash of mana shook the ground. Zhou Ho panicked when he felt an invisible wall stopping his power, while Li Yi coldly said that since Zhou Ho's father never taught him a lesson, he would do it himself. Zhou Ho backed away in fear as Su Qing shouted in disbelief, unable to accept that AD rank could lose to a minor. Li Yi then used a shadow technique that trapped Zhou Ho like a spiderweb. Zhou Ho finally realized something was wrong and shouted that Li Yi could not be a minor, guessing he must be an advanced one of higher rank. Li Yi calmly replied that he was just an E-rank minor certified by the guild. Desperate, Zhou Ho threatened him with the name of the Black Panther Gang, boasting about its power and connections. Li Yi recognized it as a lone shark gang and kicked Zhou Ho into the wall without hesitation, completely crushing his threats. Li Yi coldly declared that what he hated most were scumbags who lived off loan sharking, and when Wang rushed in to kill him, Li Yi struck back and sent him flying, telling him to get lost. Zhou Ho immediately panicked and begged for mercy, claiming it was all a misunderstanding and offering money to settle things peacefully. Li Yi mocked him, saying his face was worth very little per slap, which made Zhou Ho desperately raise the price again and again, begging him to stop. Li Yi reminded Zhou Ho of his own cruel rules about high interest, saying the earlier slaps were just interest, and now it was time to pay the principal. Zhou Ho finally broke down and offered everything he had, throwing out millions in desperation. When Li Yi saw the NG Group VIP card, he realized that these were the same people who had collected debts from him and forced him into the mines. He decided to let Zhou Ho live to draw out the real enemy and took the money, saying it was simply returning what had been stolen from him over the years. Su Qing rushed to check on Zhou Ho, shocked by what happened, while Zhou Ho blamed her for calling Li Yi a minor and causing him to lower his guard. In rage and humiliation, he slapped her and silently swore revenge, believing his loss would not end there. The scene then shifted to a dark place where Brother Panther listened coldly as Zhou Ho cried over the phone, claiming someone had stolen a treasured sword and threatened the Black Panther gang. Panther ordered the man's information to be sent to him. Elsewhere, a subordinate reported that they had obtained an item and asked what to do with the people involved. Panther replied indifferently, pretending there were no people at all, and the men were crushed without mercy. Panther then calmly stated that the person Zhou Ho mentioned now belonged to them, and whether he lived or died no longer mattered. Li Yi approached the counter and stated that he was an E-rank advanced one looking for a task that suited him. The people around immediately mocked him, calling him trash and saying the lowest tasks there were D-rank, warning that he was only asking to be killed. They laughed and claimed that E-ranks survived by begging, treating them like parasites. The staff member politely but firmly told Li Yi to leave and wait outside, explaining that E-ranks were only chosen there if a team needed them. Li Yi stayed calm and thought about how the money he had just gained was quickly taken away by loan sharks, making it even more urgent for him to secure a task. Suddenly the atmosphere changed as a crushing pressure filled the area, causing the mages to murmur in shock and recognize it as a B-rank aura. Many of them could not even move and wondered why a B-rank would appear in such a place. Li Yi observed the girl releasing the pressure and found her appearance gentle and refined, yet her aura was both bold and restrained, leaving him unsure whether she was hiding something. When a D-rank task at the Beast Abyss was announced that required a D-rank advanced one to work as a minor, the crowd continued whispering in disbelief. They noticed that Li Yi, an E-rank, was completely unaffected by the B-rank pressure, while their own legs were trembling. Li Yi realized he was the only one standing normally. From the girl's perspective, she also found it strange that a mere minor could remain untouched by her B-rank pressure, and her interest in Li Yi quietly grew. The staff quickly recognized the girl as Miss Jean from Longmen 3rd Street, and eagerly offered to introduce his many D-rank advanced ones to her. She refused and directly chose Li Yi instead. When the boy tried to object and said Li Yi had not queued to register, she coldly declared that she was the rule and repeated her choice. The boy immediately obeyed and secretly wondered why this was the first time Miss Qin personally selected a minor. Later in the Beast Abyss, Li quietly observed the team and noted that the frontliners, damage dealers, and support were well balanced and moved in perfect coordination. With AB rank Advanced 1 leading them, the Minotaurs ahead should not have been a threat. However, Li sensed something wrong and realized the beast wave below far exceeded D rank standards. Shadow explained that Li Yi's shadow eye had reached Tier 2, giving him perception far beyond ordinary people. Li then wondered why Miss Qin, who should sense it as well, showed no reaction, suspecting she had already noticed but was hiding it for her own reasons. A warrior soon reported the location of the Starlight Crystal Vein, and Miss Qin ordered Li Yi to follow her. Li agreed but felt uneasy, sensing the danger growing stronger with every step. He questioned whether she truly did not care if a minor or even her teammates died, or if she believed her B-rank power alone was enough to protect everyone. As they landed, the ominous feeling peaked, and they came face to face with a D-rank Minotaur Beastman. Li sensed that a B-rank Advanced 1 was about to act, but instead Miss Qin drew her sword and ordered him to go first while she covered him. Li protested and reminded her that he was just a minor, questioning why a B-rank would not fight and instead push an E-rank minor forward. Miss Qin coldly reasoned that she was paid minor wages and had no reason to risk her life, then offered him $1 million to deal with the beasts. Tempted by the money, Li stepped forward and prepared to fight, even as the charging beasts made him worry about losing his reward. Miss Qin quickly raised a shield around herself, surprising Li Yi and making him realize he had misjudged her. He cut down the beasts one by one and mocked her, saying she seemed to attract hatred, while she casually declared that the beasts now belonged to him. Li Yi continued slashing through them and called her hopeless as she ran aside, believing she was finally safe. That confidence vanished when a beast suddenly appeared behind her, and she shouted in fear, confused about why the beasts were not afraid of her. Li noticed something strange, sensing that she clearly had the ability to fight back yet acted terrified. Miss Qin threw the beast away with another shield, but this time her bracelet shattered, revealing the truth. Li realized she relied on a protective charm rather than her own strength and asked if she was a non-combat type Advanced. Panicking, Miss Qin begged him to keep it a secret after they left. Li calmly replied that secrets cost extra, while she asked in confusion why the Minotaurs were only attacking him. Li activated Shadow Eye Level 2 and finally noticed a shadowy man hiding nearby, realizing the man had been suppressing his aura, which explained why he was not sensed earlier. He understood that the strange fluctuations controlling the Minotaurs came from this hidden figure. As Qin shouted at him in panic, Li kept cutting down the beasts and felt the pressure rising as more Minotaurs gathered. He knew he could not use wide attacks without risking her safety and realized that if this continued, he would be worn down to death. Li quickly judged the situation and decided to turn the enemy's goal into an advantage. He openly warned Qin that she had already used up her protective items and was a non-combat type, telling her to be careful of sneak attacks. Qin reacted in shock, furious that he said it out loud. From the shadows, the man believed the miner had almost ruined his plan and focused his killing intent on Qin, blaming her father for everything as he launched a sudden strike. Li intercepted the attack in time and cut off the man's hand, revealing that this person had been using infrasound waves to control the Minotaurs and force them to attack Qin. The man, named Luden, laughed bitterly and admitted he had underestimated a mere miner. However, he warned that the fight was not over and began transforming into a beast, declaring that he would show the true terror of a control-type Advanced 1. Li immediately sensed a powerful aura and realized it was C rank. Qin quickly explained that Luden was absorbing the life force of the beastmen to strengthen himself, and she shouted in alarm when she noticed he was evolving into a C rank lava minotaur. Li was stunned that Luden could jump from D rank straight to C rank and thought that his opponent's cheat was so strong that even he felt inferior. Luden attacked them with incredible force, but Li blocked the strike and the clash shook the ground. Li realized that facing AC rank's destructive power alone was too much of a stretch. Qin called out, noticing Li was hurt, and he held her hand while running, telling her to hold on tight. Luden tried to move but found himself restrained, surprising Qin, who realized Li also had a control-type skill. Li knew he could not hold Luden for long and urged Qin to escape, telling her to keep running through the dungeon as far as possible. When she asked about him, he explained that he had to stay behind to hold Luden back and buy her time, promising he would come find her soon. As he thought about the situation, he realized that protecting her was worth every effort, valuing her at $1 million to him. Luden shouted angrily, asking where someone was hiding. Li asked back if he was looking for someone and then slashed his sword while dodging Luden's attacks. He realized that even the cracks in the rock were too strong to break. Luden yelled at him, calling him stupid for trying to chop rock with a blade, and attacked again. Li thought the lava around them made the fight tricky and decided to lure Luden to a more open area. Luden insulted him, calling him a rat for running away, while Li activated Shadow Eye, searching for a weakness. Luden threatened to kill him and then go after the woman he cared about, attacking fiercely. Li finally found the weakness and prepared to strike, but Luden shouted that in the face of absolute power, all his tricks were meaningless. Li thought about how terrifying Luden's power was and wondered if this was really only Class C. Luden chased him, asking where he would run this time. Li waited patiently for an opening. Luden mocked him for trying to stab him with his dagger, saying it was useless and could barely scratch him. Li dodged another attack and saw his chance. He slashed with his dagger but was surprised by the intense heat, realizing that even shadow energy could not completely block it. He admitted to himself that Luden was smarter than he thought and knew how to protect his weak spot. Luden acknowledged that Li had sensed his weakness but said it did not matter because the heat in that spot was still over 2,000 degrees. He demanded to know where the woman was, promising to spare Li if he told. Li refused, thinking that a traitor who sold out his master for fame and fortune could not be trusted. Luden shouted angrily that Li was asking for death. Luden kept shouting as he attacked and dared Li to stop dodging if he was really strong. Li stayed calm and shaped his dark mana into shadow morph chain blades to block the strike. He mocked Luden for dodging as well and felt the timing was right. He changed his technique into shadow morph rope dart and struck back, but Luden only laughed and charged harder, telling him to give up. The pressure kept rising and Li felt his shadow energy draining too fast. He realized that if this continued he would fall into danger, yet he refused to rely on entropic again or let anyone control his body. Even if death waited, he chose to push forward, believing that defeating AC rank enemy would bring huge experience and a breakthrough he could not waste. Li gathered everything he had and released a powerful mana blast that shook the ground. Luden screamed and was thrown back, roaring that Li had lost. Li was stunned by the sudden change and sensed that Luden had gone berserk. Luden raged that a mere minor had forced him this far, and Li felt the heat spreading as the attacks gained a burning effect. With flames in his power and fury in his voice, Luden declared that this was the end. Li felt a surge of power flooding out of his body and wondered why it was far stronger than before. Shadow explained that this energy had always existed inside him, but his body had not been able to channel it until it was tempered by extreme heat. What seemed like a mistake had actually awakened a new form of shadow energy. As Li sensed it spreading through him, he realized that it was rapidly healing his wounds, yet Shadow made it clear that the power did far more than just recovery. Luden was shaken as he watched Li heal at an unbelievable speed and felt a far more sinister aura pouring off him. He could not believe that Li was matching his speed even after it had tripled, and the thought that an E rank could reach this state filled him with fear. Desperate, Luden launched another attack and tried to flood the area with lava, determined to leave Li nowhere to escape. Surrounded by flaring mana, Li understood that he had entered Shadow Enhancement, and calmly mocked Luden, saying the heat was still too weak. Luden roared in disbelief, unable to accept what he was seeing, while Li stepped forward with cold confidence, reminding him that after all the slicing earlier, it was finally his turn. Luden and Li rushed toward each other at the same time, and Li struck first, cutting into Luden's hand. Luden countered in fury, but Li calmly blocked the blow and the damaged hand shattered completely. As the clash continued, Li realized that with Shadow Enhancement active, his charged attacks could even deal damage from a distance. Luden boasted that as long as lava existed, he could regenerate endlessly and claimed that Li attacks were useless. Li observed that Luden energy was already weakening and doubted that his regeneration was truly infinite. When Luden challenged him to try again, they collided once more, and Li unleashed a storm of slashes that left Luden confused and shaken. Li told him that his energy had reached its limit and urged him to surrender. Faced with defeat, Luden suddenly tried to talk things out and claimed there was no real hatred between them. Li admitted that was true, but reminded him that Miss Jean had paid him $1 million to protect her. Luden tried to bargain, offering $5 million in exchange for handing Jean over once they returned to Rong City. Li saw through the offer and pointed out that Luden would likely betray him later or return with reinforcements to kill him. Luden denied it fiercely, but Li Yi used that denial to make his decision clearer. Li Yi explained that someone like Luden deserved to be handed over to Qin Shaoshang, Miss Qin father, who would take great interest in a traitor who tried to harm his daughter. Saving Qin Shaoshang's daughter and capturing an internal traitor would earn a massive favor from the head of Longmen 3rd Street, which was worth far more than 5 million. Terror filled Luden as he realized that falling into Qin Shaoshang's hands could be worse than death, and that the organization would not spare his family either. Driven into a corner, he shouted that Li Yi should not blame him for what came next. At that moment, Shadow warned Li Yi in shock that Luden possessed a shard of the gate to the other world, and if it was destroyed, the Beast Abyss would lose its only connection to the outside world, trapping everyone inside forever. Luden laughed wildly and blamed Li Yi for forcing him into a desperate move as he prepared to attack. Before he could act, Li Yi struck first and slashed his weapon with perfect timing. Luden screamed in agony as his mana core shattered into pieces, ending his power completely. Li Yi finally understood why he had not been able to sense an energy core earlier, and realized it had been hidden there all along. Shadow warned him that without the Minotaur's energy support, the Beast Abyss had begun to collapse. The scene shifted to the exit of the Beast Abyss, where others spoke in shock about the sudden earthquake inside. Qin looked at Li Yi with new eyes and admitted that his strength was far beyond E rank. She invited him to join Longmen 3rd Street, and promised that her father would treat someone of his talent well. Li Yi refused politely, saying he did not want to join any faction for now, and asked her to keep his powers a secret. Qin agreed and handed him the 1 million reward, praising it as well earned. Li Yi thanked her and asked if Longmen 3rd Street accepted items like the sword he had obtained. Qin examined it, and noted that while it had no clear energy signature, the material itself was very special. She decided to take it back for appraisal and promised that he would receive its full value. Li Yi agreed and felt satisfied, thinking that she seemed knowledgeable about weapons and might become a good channel to sell his gear. Even if she turned out to be unreliable, he felt that having 1 million in hand was still a fair outcome. Later, while sitting alone in his room, Li Yi wondered about the shard of the gate to the other world and questioned how important it truly was. Shadow explained that if enough shards were gathered, he could help Li Yi reach S rank, or even higher. As Li Yi absorbed the idea, Shadow quietly thought about the return of the gate to the other world and the terrifying beings that might still exist. He believed Li Yi was the key to the future but decided it was too early to reveal the full truth, choosing instead to let him grow stronger before facing battles beyond human understanding. Li Yi quietly observed the guarded area and counted the forces, noticing 1 B rank and 3 C rank fighters stationed there. The NG group had sealed the E rank rift zone because of a supposed mining accident, but the number of powerful guards made him uneasy. He realized that with his current strength, he could not uncover the truth yet. Shadow questioned why so much effort was spent on an E rank rift, but Li Yi knew that place held the truth behind his parents' deaths. Memories came back from the day everything changed. A man had handed him money, saying it was compensation from the NG group, and urged him to sign a paper admitting his parents had died in an accident. When Li Yi demanded the truth, he was roughly told that his parents and other miners had all died inside the rift. He refused to accept it, insisting it was impossible since his parents were C-rank evolved and should not have died so easily. He begged to be allowed inside to search for them, but he was shouted down and told that anything could happen in a rift zone, no matter how strong someone was. He argued that it was only an E-rank rift and that the strongest monsters should not have been able to kill his parents, especially when retreat was possible. His questions were twisted into accusations of greed, and he was threatened instead of answered. At that moment, Ning Donghao, the chairman of the NG group and an A-rank evolved, stepped in and scolded his men for their behavior. He told Li Yi to take the money for now, saying it could help him survive the hard times ahead. Li Yi refused again and insisted that he only wanted the truth. Ning Donghao promised that the matter would be thoroughly investigated and that Li Yi would be given an answer. Back then, Li Yi believed the promise and thought the truth would soon be revealed. He never imagined that what followed would be his parents being falsely charged with theft and a demand for millions in compensation, turning his grief into endless bitterness and doubt. In the present, Shadow and Tropic reminded Li Yi that without strength anyone would be oppressed no matter their race. He urged Li Yi to stop standing around in confusion and focus on gathering more shards of the gate to the other world. Li Yi felt annoyed at being told something so obvious. He reflected on how his undetectable shadow energy and the label of E-rank miner had left him ignored and without invitations to any parties. He also grew more confused about Entropic, who spoke of taking over his body one moment and helping him grow stronger the next. Li wondered whether Entropic was good or evil, why he had shrunk, whether his power was fading, and even suspected that the promise of reaching S rank might have been nothing but a mad rant. Entropic suddenly insisted that if he had not seen talent in Li, he would not have bothered with him. Li protested that he had not spoken anything out loud and felt even more certain that Entropic was unstable. Soon after, the scene shifted to the chemical sector at the entrance of a D-rank rift zone. Someone complained about Li arriving late, and he apologized, explaining that he had come from far away. He recognized Uncle Hao and greeted him warmly, noting that it had been a long time since they last met. Uncle Hao remarked that Li had grown a lot and reminded him that 5 years had passed since his parents' accident. Others in the group showed clear disdain, expressing disappointment at waiting for a useless miner rather than someone important. They said the mission involved mining and they did not want to trouble evolved fighters with such work. Impatient voices demanded the mission details, and it was announced that the rift was a D-rank zone where they needed to locate cold crystal ore and extract 60 kilograms of it. Li was surprised by the heavy lineup, noting that 4 C-rank evolved fighters had been brought for a D-rank rift, which felt like overkill. He sensed hostility from them and was certain they were not good people. At the same time, he faintly detected the presence of another C-rank entity within the rift. Meanwhile, Blood Panther, the second in command of the Black Panther gang, checked his phone and casually declared that all his toys were ready, signaling the start of the hunt. Hao noticed that Li was not wearing a protective suit and asked if he did not need one. Li calmly replied that it was unnecessary since he had already advanced and could handle the environment. His words drew mocking comments from Gu-er, who called an advanced miner a rare sight, while Gu-de scolded him but still sneered that Li was only a king of the trash heap. Hao quickly warned Li not to provoke them, and Li reassured him that he was not reckless. As they moved deeper, Li carefully observed the surroundings and sensed that the vegetation had been deliberately arranged for concealment. A heavy feeling of danger pressed on him, as if something deadly was lurking nearby. He could no longer ignore it and felt that a C-rank presence had noticed something as well, possibly hiding and observing from the shadows. Hao decided to speed up, and Li immediately realized it was the perfect chance to use the terrain to shake the others off and investigate in secret. He told Hao to hold tight and suddenly broke into a run. Gu-er shouted in shock, unable to believe how fast a miner could move, and demanded that Li stop. Gu-de dismissed it coldly, saying that 2 pieces of trash leaving the group was nothing but suicide. High above on a tree, the second commander watched with interest and sensed that the others had felt danger too. He found it amusing and thought that if everyone were as foolish as those 3, the game would be far too boring. Meanwhile, Gu-san voiced his unease and said the mission felt wrong, as if someone had been watching them since they entered. Gu-de brushed it off and mocked his caution, insisting that a D-rank mission posed no threat to 3 C-rank fighters. Gu-er admitted he felt the same strange chill in the air and suggested turning back, but Gu-de snapped at him as well, telling them both to stop panicking. The second commander suddenly attacked and trapped Gu-er with invisible strings, mocking him for wanting to leave when the game had only begun. Gu-de shouted in panic and begged Blood Panther to release his brother and talk it out, but the second commander coldly replied that there was nothing left to discuss after the brothers had provoked the Black Panther gang again and again. In an instant, Gu-er was killed, and Gu-san rushed forward in rage, swearing to fight to the death. The second commander dismissed him with contempt, bound him the same way, and ended his life just as easily. Seeing this, Gu-de was struck by terror and turned to flee, while the second commander laughed and urged him to run faster, enjoying the fear of his prey. Elsewhere, Li stopped with Uncle Hao and suggested they rest for a moment. Hao was confused and asked why Li had abandoned the other evolved fighters. Li instead questioned Hao about whether he had offended any powerful faction, which left Hao even more confused since he was only a miner. Li then revealed his suspicion that the mission itself was a deadly trap and that someone intended to bury everyone in this cursed land. Hao grew frightened and urged Li to explain, but before anything more could be said, Gu-de arrived in fury and accused Li of knowing everything and letting his brothers die. Li remained calm and told Gu-de that at least he had served one purpose by leading him straight to the mastermind. Gu-de was shocked and demanded to know what Li meant, only for Li to bluntly state that he was about to die. At that moment, Gu-de realized he had been caught in strings without even noticing. The second commander appeared again, amused that a mere miner could be so interesting. As the danger closed in, Li activated his ultimate shadow eye, preparing to face what came next. Hao fell to his knees and begged Blood Panther for mercy, calling him Lord Panther and saying that they were only minors who had never crossed him. Blood Panther calmly revealed that Hao had exposed himself a few days earlier while drunk, and that single slip was how they learned he was the one who had slipped through. Hao swore in desperation that he would take the secret to his grave and never tell anyone. Blood Panther coldly stated his belief that only the dead could truly keep secrets. Li shouted a warning, but it was already too late. Blood Panther fired a mana attack toward Hao, forcing Li to grit his teeth and rush forward to slash at it. Blood Panther showed mild surprise, admitting that he had not expected a minor like Li to have real skill and mocking him for defeating someone like Shou Ting. He made it clear that such an achievement meant nothing against him. Li dodged the incoming attacks as Blood Panther mocked his eagerness to die and promised to grant his wish. Li activated Shadow Enhancement and pushed himself to the limit, barely managing to avoid the relentless assault. Even so, he realized that he still could not fully block Blood Panther attacks, and the gap in strength was terrifying. Blood Panther noticed his distraction and struck him hard, sending Li flying and proving just how overwhelming his power truly was. Li warned Uncle Hao to stay back and quickly realized that fighting at close range put him at a huge disadvantage, forcing him to change his tactics. Blood Panther showed no concern and declared that both of them would die today. Li refused to back down, and claimed that who would die first was still uncertain. He activated his ultimate Shadow Eye and formed a Shadow Dagger, launching an attack, but Blood Panther easily blocked it and mocked him for his limits. Li pressed on without hesitation, proving he still had more tricks, yet Blood Panther sneered that no matter what he did, he was still only an E-rank minor. At that moment, a hidden attacker suddenly burst from the ground and tried to assassinate Blood Panther. Blood Panther showed no surprise and remarked that he had expected the move earlier, calmly pointing out that the attacker weakness was poor skill choice. He closed the distance instantly and killed the attacker with overwhelming force. Li was shocked that a C-rank fighter had been eliminated so easily and finally understood how terrifying Blood Panther truly was. Knowing he stood no chance in a direct fight, Li shouted that they should focus on escaping instead. Blood Panther laughed at the idea, convinced there was no way out for them. Later, Li helped treat Uncle Hao injuries and planned to wait for nightfall to find a chance to escape. Hao tried to persuade Li to leave him behind, saying he would only slow him down, but Li refused. He demanded to know what Hao had done to make Blood Panther so determined to kill him. With a heavy expression, Hao revealed that he believed he had uncovered the truth behind Li's parents' deaths. Li froze in shock, unable to believe what he had just heard. Li demanded that Uncle Hao tell him what he knew, sensing there was a hidden truth. Hao admitted that at first he had only suspected, but Blood Panther coming after him confirmed that something was wrong with Cui Shihao. He revealed that before the mining accident, Li's father had told him he suspected Cui Shihao of conducting dangerous experiments in the mining area. Hao never expected the accident to happen so soon after, and that Li's parents were framed for stealing ore. Li angrily asked why Hao had never said anything back then, and Hao explained that he had been scared. He was just a miner with a family to support, and could not afford to lose his job. Li accused him of standing by while his parents suffered such injustice, and Hao admitted he felt very guilty. He confessed that his guilt had driven him to drink and complain to someone, which had ultimately brought this fatal disaster upon himself. Suddenly, Blood Panther appeared and captured Hao in his strings. Li shouted in alarm, but Hao smiled and told him not to hold a grudge. Blood Panther, realizing who Li was, said he finally understood why he looked familiar. Recognizing him as the son of two C-rank fighters, he charged at Li, declaring that he would send him down to reunite with his parents. Li met the attack defiantly, telling Blood Panther that would never happen. They clashed head-on and blocked each other's attacks again and again. Blood Panther mocked Li, saying the feeling of watching his own flesh and blood suffer should be exciting. Li answered that the blood spider silk was not invincible and transformed his shadow into a great sword. He focused on the timing and realized that the moment Blood Panther attacked was when his defense was weakest. Pouring everything into a single strike, he slashed forward with all his will. Blood Panther was forced back and admitted in surprise that Li was ruthless enough to trade injury for injury. Even so, Li felt his strength reaching its limit. Blood Panther quickly saw through it, and sneered that Li had only been bluffing. He admitted he had been startled, but said that if Li were not just E-rank, he might have been finished. He bound Li with his threads and mocked him cruelly, laughing at his helpless glare and saying that such unwilling eyes excited him the most. To deepen that despair, he revealed the truth. Hao Wu had only been half right, because Li's parents had not died in the mining accident. Blood Panther confessed that he had killed them himself, and described how Li's father had looked at him with the same unwilling eyes when he struck down Li's mother. Li slowly spoke Blood Panther's name as fury flooded his body. At that moment, Blood Panther sensed something wrong and realized his threads were being burned away. Dark mana burst out of Li as he roared in hatred, vowing to slaughter the demon before him. Blood Panther realized that Li was using his hatred to stimulate the shadow energy in his body, and a message appeared in front of Li showing that his internal shadow energy had surged. His level corrected to C rank, and his shadow enhancement advanced from Tier 1 to Tier 2. A new skill awakened within him called Shadow Jaunt, allowing his body to slip into any shadow and emerge from another connected shadow. Blood Panther noticed in shock that Li's severe injuries had healed completely, and realized he also had healing abilities. He attacked, saying that prey was only interesting when it struggled on the brink of death. Li suddenly appeared behind him and declared that beneath the shadows, Blood Panther was the true prey. Blood Panther was stunned by Li's sudden increase in strength and attacked again, confident that his speed alone was enough to counter him. Li responded with a flying dagger swarm, but Blood Panther dismissed it as useless. Li then used Shadow Jaunt with Flying Thunder Step, teleporting with a thrown weapon to strike from unexpected angles. Blood Panther tried to block it but found himself overwhelmed. Li explained that he was not trying to break Blood Panther defense but to exploit the gap between offense and defense. The speed at which Blood Panther controlled his blood threads could not match his reaction speed, and that was his weakness. Li slashed repeatedly with precision and force. Blood Panther, spitting blood, could not believe what was happening and was shocked that he could lose to a mere minor. Li pointed his weapon at Blood Panther and demanded the truth about what had really happened during the mining accident. Blood Panther began to speak, but Li suddenly cut off his hand without hesitation. Blood Panther screamed in pain, and Li coldly warned that his patience was limited. Forced into fear, Blood Panther finally confessed that everything had been planned by Cui Shihao. He explained that Li's father had discovered Cui Shihao's secret experiments in the mining area, and to prevent the truth from being exposed, Cui Shihao ordered them to kill Li's parents and fake the incident as a mining accident. Blood Panther tried to provoke Li by asking if he was scared now that he knew someone from the NG group was behind it, and even advised him to let him go. Li answered by cutting his throat, declaring that he would not spare a single person involved in his parents' murder. Later that night, the scene shifted to the NG group headquarters. Li hid behind a wall as Entropic warned him that even though he had reached C rank, he should not rush to his death, since an A rank advanced was nearby. Li moved swiftly and calmly, explaining that he already knew Ning Donghao, the chairman of the NG group and an A rank advanced, was present. He stated that he would not act recklessly against Cui Shihao yet, especially since Blood Panther words could not be fully trusted. Li decided he needed to investigate further to confirm whether Cui Shihao alone had ordered the killings or if the entire NG group was involved. Deep inside, he swore that if Ning Donghao was also part of it, then even an A rank would not escape, because a blood debt had to be repaid in blood. Li observed the Black Panther gang warehouse and wondered why Cui Shihao was there in the middle of the night. Inside, the gang members were handling experimental equipment carefully. Cui Shihao asked if the old miner Hao Wu was dead, and Blood Panther replied that he was missing and that the otherworldly gate used for infiltration had disappeared, so they could not confirm Hao Wu's fate. Cui Shihao was shocked, questioning how this could happen since Blood Panther was only C rank. Blood Panther explained that Blood Panther had probably underestimated his enemy, and that among those killed were 4 C rank advanced fighters. Cui Shihao ordered the equipment to be moved quickly, stressing that the experiment was at a critical stage and that there could be no mistakes. Blood Panther asked if the money was ready, but Cui Shihao told him not to worry about it. Meanwhile, Li hid and realized it was indeed Cui Shihao. Suddenly, an attack came toward the gang, and Blood Panther shouted while dodging, sensing a wave of killing intent. Li thought he had been almost discovered and realized that even with his C rank strength, he was still not strong enough to act carelessly. The scene shifted to the Qin Group, an enterprise run by Qin Shaosheng, president of Longmen 3rd Street. Entropic noticed Li and asked why he was there instead of looking for available missions first thing in the morning. Li explained that he was there to find the third fragment, and to check the value of Entropic's weapon. A girl approached and offered help, and Li asked for Qin Xin. She asked if he had an appointment, but before he could answer, Su Qing appeared and mocked him, calling him a poor miner who had no right to mention the eldest young miss. Master Qin joined in, asking why he had not been thrown out yet, and the bodyguards nodded in agreement. Li commented on the supposed hospitality of Longmen 3rd Street, but Su Qing and Master Qin continued insulting him, saying he was not even fit to be their dog. Li realized that everyone from the Qin family was arrogant and domineering and decided there was no need to contact Qin Xin. As he tried to leave, Su Qing blocked him, and Master Qin ordered his guards to cripple him. Li used Shadow John to attack the bodyguards and grab Master Qin by the throat. Su Qing shouted for him to let go, warning that the Qin family would not forgive him, but Li threw them aside, saying he would spare them for Qin Xin's sake. Master Qin, enraged, tried to attack, but a man stopped him. Qin Xin then appeared and scolded Li for daring to cause trouble at the Qin group. Master Qin was furious and shouted that Li was dead for causing trouble at the Qin group and warned that his cousin would not let him off. Qin Xin, however, told them to throw him out, but Master Qin argued that letting him go was too easy and suggested breaking his arms and legs. Su Qin tried to defend herself, claiming that it was Li who had spoken her name directly and that young Master Qin had only been venting her anger. Qin Xin intervened, saying that Li was her friend and there was nothing wrong with him calling her name. She ordered the arrogant security guards and the troublesome junior employee to be thrown out and never hired again. The guards began escorting them out, and Su Qin protested, saying she was young Master Qin's girlfriend and begged him to speak up for her, but Qin Xin warned her not to misuse the Qin family name again. Qin Xin then welcomed Li inside and apologized for the embarrassment caused by a junior from a side branch of the family. Li accepted it calmly, saying every family had a few mischievous relatives. She led him further, but a girl informed her that President Qin wanted to see her immediately. Qin Xin excused herself, and Li told her it was fine to attend to her business. Left behind, an old man confronted Li, asking who he was. Li hesitated but said he was just a miner. He realized that mental attacks like this were difficult to defend against, even with shadow enhancement. The old man, sensing Li's strength, noted that he had withstood the blow and must have at least B rank strength. He demanded to know why Li had faked his identity to get close to Xin, and warned that failure to answer honestly would have consequences. Qin Xin grabbed the old man by the ear and shouted at Qin Shaoshang, accusing him of sending her away on purpose so he could interrogate her friend. Shaoshang calmly told her to be gentle and give her father some face, but she shouted back, telling him he had no dignity and ordering him to leave and stop harassing her friend. Li realized that Qin Shaoshang was the one in charge of Longmen 3rd Street. Qin Xin apologized to Li, explaining that her father was always suspicious of anyone who got close to her, fearing they had impure intentions. Li said it was understandable and guessed that Shaoshang was just worried she might be cheated on. Qin Xin was surprised that he seemed to know her father well, and Li replied that it was hard not to. Meanwhile, Shaoshang was watching secretly and worried that Li might have intentions toward his daughter. He thought about how he had raised her for 16 years and could not let anyone harm her, even imagining extreme measures if needed. Li noticed that Shaoshang's thoughts were being spoken out loud and commented on it, while Qin Xin shouted at her father to get lost. Later, Qin Xin told Li that there was a 5 million deposit on a card for the appraisal of the special material great sword and explained that fragments from another dimension had become very rare because someone had been buying them in large quantities. She suggested that Li might find one at the Longmen 3rd Street auction. Li thanked her, and Entropic thought that these fragments might be related to those people who were collecting them. The guards talked about Li, saying he was 20 years old and had always been an ordinary person. They noted that he had only been classified as an E-rank ascendant a few days ago and that no special energy could be detected in his body, so he was still just a minor. Shaoshang wondered if Li had really gone from E-rank to C-rank in such a short time, or if he had been hiding his strength all along. Suddenly, a call came in and Shaoshang answered it. Old Hua asked if Shaoshang still had any of the great swords his daughter had sent over. Shaoshang said he was not sure and asked what was wrong. Hua shouted to hurry and check because they wanted to take as many swords as were available. Shaoshang asked if the swords had some special use, and Hua said he could not reveal too much but hinted that the material of the swords might raise the overall strength of their army. Shaoshang thought about how mysterious Li was, noting that even the weapon he casually produced was extraordinary, and that he was impossible to figure out. Meanwhile, Li thought there might be fragments among the things around him. Su Qing told Zhou that there was really nothing going on between her and Qin Ting and that he kept pestering her, so she had even quit her job at the Qin Corporation to get away from him. Zhou told her that it did not matter that she quit because he would take care of her from now on, and Su Qing felt grateful and said he was so good to her. He thought about the miner and wondered if Lord Blood Leopard had not made his move yet. He demanded to know how a miner like Li had sneaked in. Li reminded him of being slapped a few days ago. Zhou told Li not to come near him. Black Panther scolded Zhou Ting, saying he was a disgrace to their gang. Zhou called out to Brother Bao. Black Panther told Li that slapping his subordinate was like insulting the whole gang and demanded an apology on his knees. Li refused and said kneeling was only a dream. Black Panther admitted he did not expect a kid like Li to be so tough. Zhou shouted at Li for offending Brother Bao. Qin told Black Panther that Dragon Gate 3rd Street welcomed him if he was there to spend money but would not hold back if he wanted a fight. Black Panther decided to give her face and said they were heading to the auction. Qin asked Li if he was alright, and he said he was fine. Black Panther wondered about Li Yi's background and how he ended up on his bad side. Zhou explained that Li Yi had stolen the precious sword meant as a tribute, and even boasted about wiping out the Black Panther gang. Black Panther was shocked and asked if it was true. Zhou and Su Qing confirmed it. Cui Shihao asked what was wrong, and Black Panther said that Li Yi had been one of Blood Leopard's targets, and questioned how he was still alive. Cui Shihao wondered if Li Yi had killed Blood Leopard. Zhou said it was impossible because Li Yi was just an E rank. Cui Shihao looked at Li Yi and thought about how the timid weakling from before had somehow gotten involved with Tai Si. Li Yi asked Qin why she had come, and she said it was her father who suddenly wanted to see him. He asked if her father was going to attack him again, and she reassured him that with her there, he would not dare. Cui Shihao expressed surprise at running into Li Yi, and Li Yi humbly said he was just a minor character forced to work in the mines to pay off his debts, and could not dare to associate with a high-level executive from NG Group like him. Cui Shihao explained that the decision on how to handle Li Yi's parents' case was made by higher-ups, and that he had wanted to help but was powerless, and his words carried no weight. Li said that Cui Shihao had certainly absolved himself of all responsibility, and reminded him that the truth would always come out, warning that those who did wicked things would face retribution. Black Panther shouted that Li needed to be taught a lesson. Cui Shihao said that since this was Qin Shaoshang's territory, they could not act openly, but because Li knew too much, they needed to send someone to deal with him. Black Panther agreed and said he would arrange it right away. Later Qin told her father that she had brought Li Yi and that the auction was starting, so he could chat with her father first, and she would let him know if the item he wanted appeared. Li Yi wondered why President Qin had summoned him. Shaoshang asked directly if Li Yi had any more of the weapon he had commissioned Xin to sell last time. Li Yi thought that Qin Shaoshang had specifically sought him out and seemed to really want the weapons of the Entropic clan. He decided to hold back some of the weapons because it was not safe to take out too many at once, and it would affect the price. He told Shaoshang that he had come across a weapon by chance and had 2 more at the moment. Shaoshang offered 45 million including the previous one, but Li said that 15 million per weapon was not low, yet weapons were life-saving items for people like them, so he suggested 25 million each. Shaoshang admitted the kid had some nerve. Qin then announced that the item Li wanted had appeared. Shaoshang agreed and said he would transfer the remaining 70 million to Li. The auctioneer started calling bids, and Li noticed there was really a fragment at the auction. He had over 70 million now, which should be enough, so he bid 30 million to intimidate the other buyers, though it hurt him to do so. Black Panther was shocked that Li was bidding on the item. Cui Shihao raised his bid to 50 million to test how much money Li had, and Li immediately raised it to 60 million. Shaoshang warned him that the item was not worth that price and advised him not to bid again, while Qin noted that Li was deliberately driving up the price because in the past 10 million had already been a sky-high price for it. Li thought that if Cui Shihao wanted the item, he would have to fight for it and wondered which group, the Qin group or the NG group, had more financial resources. Shaoshang claimed that of course the Qin group had more resources, but he wondered why he should help Li. The auctioneer announced a bid of 70 million from buyer number 2. Li snapped his fingers and summoned swords, saying it was because he had them. Shaoshang agreed to take the 2 swords at the previous price but said that the little money Li had would not be enough to compete. Li assured him that he could naturally produce the corresponding quantity, so President Qin could rest assured. Shaoshang wondered if Li had quite a few more weapons. Qin scolded Shaoshang for fussing over money and told Li to hurry before the other bidder snatched it. Li thought he really did not understand the world of the super rich, where over 100 million was just small change, and he bid 100 million. Chui Shihao thought the fragment was very useful for the group's secret project and raised the bid to 200 million. The bidding quickly escalated to 300 million, 400 million, and 500 million, and people murmured in surprise, wondering if the two were crazy to fight over the fragment and if it was really that valuable. Black Panther said that Li was clearly working against them, but Chui Shihao thought Li was not qualified yet and raised the bid to 1 billion. The auctioneer announced the 1 billion bid. Qin told Li that the bad guy was provoking them. Li thought that based on Chui Shihao's personality, he would not lose so much money on impulse unless something unusual was going on. Xiaoshang warned Li to think it through because the bid had already reached 1 billion and questioned if he could take out that many weapons. Qin shouted that she would cover what was missing and urged Li to bid quickly. Li then raised the bid to 2 billion. The auctioneer announced the 2 billion bid again and finalized it, congratulating buyer number 9 for winning the unknown fragment. Black Panther was shocked and wondered where Li got so much money, while Chui Shihao believed it must have come from Qin Xiaoshang. Qin felt excited and said she loved seeing bad people get humiliated, while Li calmly asked if it was really worth such excitement. Xiaoshang pointed out that after deducting earlier amounts, Li still needed to cover more than 70 million and asked if he could truly provide enough weapons. Li explained that things were precious because they were rare and that when there were many of them, the price could not be judged the same way as before. He then revealed that he had over 100 weapons, which should be enough to cover the 2 billion cost. Xiaoshang praised Li for being straightforward and secretly admired his temperament and strength, thinking he would be valuable if he worked for him. Qin told Li to remember to call her next time something fun happened. Xiaoshang quickly dismissed the idea and asked Qin to go home with him, telling Li he could directly collect the item he won. Li thanked President Qin. Before leaving, Xiaoshang warned Li that although he had unknown methods, the NG group was not something he could face alone and advised him to consider forming alliances if their goals aligned. Meanwhile, Black Panther reported that Qin Xiaoshang and his daughter had left and that Li was the one going to pick up the fragment. He suggested making a move after Li left the Longmen 3rd Street area. Chui Shihao warned him not to make any more mistakes, and Black Panther confidently said he would send Zhou H along with 3 C-rank experts and guaranteed it would be foolproof. Li thought that Qin Xiaoshang had clearly investigated him and that the last words were meant to win him over, but as long as he was not bound to Qin, forming an alliance for some extra help was not a bad idea. Entropic mocked Qin Xiaoshang for being only A rank and claimed that as long as Li had enough fragments, he could easily reach S rank. Li said he believed him and that he was just looking for a place to start the trial, though deep down he doubted those words and thought S ranks were extremely rare in the whole world. He held back his thoughts to avoid provoking Entropic. Suddenly, Li saw flames rising from his rented apartment and felt shocked. People nearby panicked and shouted as they ran, calling out to their families in fear. Someone quickly informed Li that the Black Panther gang was planning to make a move on him, and Li realized they had already acted. He was advised to hide while reinforcements were brought over, but Li calmly said he could handle it himself. Soon after, Zhou arrived with his gang and arrogantly told Li to kneel and beg if he wanted his life spared. Li looked at them with disdain and said they truly underestimated him by sending only a handful of people to meet their deaths. Zhou boasted that Li would be the one to die and wanted to see how a single E rank could fight against 3 genuine C ranks. Li calmly asked why Blood Panther had failed to kill him. One of Zhou's men wondered if Li was hiding his strength. Zhou shouted that Li was just a miner with no combat ability. A man attacked, but Li vanished and appeared behind him, slashing his sword and admitting he was just a miner. Another man was shocked at how quickly Li had moved. Zhou ordered 2 men to get him together, but Li mocked them, asking why they were scared of a miner, and told them they liked playing with fire. Zhou tried to threaten him, saying President Chui and Brother Panther would not let him off, but Li threw him into the fire and warned that he would be sending them to find him soon. Qin arrived and asked if Li was alright, and he said he was fine since there were just a few minor characters. She asked what he planned to do next, and he said he would strike back since they had made the first move. She offered to help, explaining that she had long been annoyed with the Black Panther gang and that he was one of the few friends she had. Gus smiled and said they would start by taking on the Black Panther gang. Qin told Li that he could stay there until he found a new place and said hardly anyone stayed there, so he could choose a room for himself. Li picked a room, but she quickly stopped him and told him not to take that one. He still went in and remarked that the room was very girly but suited her well. Jean said she thought he would find it childish for the heiress of the Jean Corporation to like such things. Lee replied that it was normal for a girl to like them and said she looked much cuter than when she acted cold outside. Jean blushed and thought that no one had ever called her cute before. Lee laughed, and she complained that if she had not been worried about him being in danger, she would not be starving. Lee took out some food and told her to make do with it for now, explaining it was only prepared for emergencies. Jean was shocked and asked where he had conjured it from, saying she had already wondered at the auction where he pulled the weapon from. Lee casually said he knew magic, and Jean eagerly asked him to teach her. Lee then suggested that she might want to go home first, which confused her. Outside, Xiaoshang secretly observed them and felt furious, thinking that Li was getting too close to his precious daughter and that the atmosphere between them felt wrong. He worried about how close they seemed and felt deeply uneasy seeing her so happy. Sensing the danger, Li warned Qin that if she did not go back soon, he felt her father was going to eat him alive. Later, Li said that since the house was within the territory of Dragon Gate 3rd Street, no one should bother them. He thought about the 3 fragments he had collected, one from the Lava Minotaur, one from Blood Leopard, and one from the auction, and decided to begin. He wondered what connection these fragments had to the dimensional portals that appeared out of nowhere. Entropic explained that the 3 fragments were just a small part of the gate of the alternate prison and that all the dimensional portals in the world were related to the fragments of this gate. Li asked what exactly an alternate dimension was and why there were so many insectoids and beastmen inside. Entropic said they were all prisoners and that what Li called an alternate dimension or alternate prison was actually a massive interdimensional prison. He told Li that he would naturally find more answers by completing all the trials there and revealed that this place, the sky-reaching tower, was his masterpiece and also the trial ground. Li looked around and thought about how twisted Entropic's aesthetic sense was, noticing the reinforcements and big tubes, and he guessed that the tower's material was the same as the weapons and wondered if Qin Xiaoshang would buy it, thinking it would be worth a lot. Entropic reminded himself to stay calm and protect his soul. Li asked about the content of the trial, and Entropic explained that the tower had 6 floors and that with Li Yi's current strength, it would be impressive if he could even defeat the Shadow Wyvern on the first floor. Li looked at the creature and could not feel any pressure, thinking it looked like a gecko and that hitting it would be like bullying the weak. Entropic warned him that he would not be laughing for long. Li teasingly extended his hand and called the creature a little cutie. Suddenly, the wyvern burst with mana and threw Li away, but he quickly stabilized himself. The Shadow Wyvern, a sea rank creature, kept enhancing itself, increasing its size, speed, and strength by 600%, while its weakness had been marked. Li was shocked that its enhancement was 3 times stronger than his own and wondered if he was using a pirated version. Entropic explained that it was because Li Yi's constitution was inferior to his pet's. Li angrily dodged the wyvern's attack and questioned how its shadow enhancement's defense could be so strong. Entropic accused him of holding back and said that with his meager strength, he was barely tickling it. Li activated his shadow enhancement technique and tried to attack the wyvern, but it remained unharmed. Entropic thought that Li Yi's use of shadow enhancement and shadow was already very refined and decided to increase the intensity. He also thought about how the wyvern must be hungry, noting that it was edible. The wyvern tried to bite Li, who dodged and asked if the pet had had its shots because it seemed unusually aggressive. Entropic said that Li had worn the wyvern out, and now it saw him as food to replenish its energy. Li complained that it was not playing fair, but since it was hungry, he decided to use it to his advantage. He threw meat to the wyvern and then bound it with mana, successfully taming it. A screen appeared, showing that the taming of the Shadow Wyvern had been detected. Li had unlocked access rights for the first floor and obtained the binding and activation authority for the gate of the alternate prison. He wondered what the binding and activation authority were for. Entropic explained that after being replenished with energy, each fragment became a portal connected to the alternate prison. Li realized that as long as he bound a fragment from the alternate dimension, he could open a portal at will. He also thought that getting such a powerful skill on the first floor meant that the rewards on the upper 5 floors would be even greater. Entropic thought Li was getting cocky for clearing the first floor by being clever and decided to let him go to the second floor to suffer a bit. He told Li to try and said the guards there were just the stewards and servants of the sky-reaching tower. Li suspected that Entropic was up to something and worried that there might be another transforming creature inside. He noted that the pet on the first floor was already C rank, so the second floor would definitely not be simple. Entropic told him to take a look first before deciding and said it was not dangerous. Li agreed, and monsters appeared in front of them, including the Thunder Serpent King, a C-rank Hydroturtle, and a C-rank Lava Minotaur. Li was surprised and asked how these could be considered mere servants. The Thunder Serpent attacked Li, but he dodged easily and noticed that the entrance was sealed. The serpent shouted to kill the intruder, but Li used his Shadow Jaunt and Shadow Enhancement techniques to dodge all attacks and close the door. He accused Entropic of lying by saying the creatures inside were just servants. Entropic explained that he had not lied and that they really were all servants, but Li's abilities were too weak to handle them. Li asked what a molten lava minotaur could do, and Entropic said it provided heating. He asked about the Thunder King snake, which provided electricity, and the Hydro Tortoise, which mopped the floors. Li then asked about the other Otherworlders, and Entropic said they handled chores and moving things. A screen then appeared, showing that an A-rank life form was approaching, and Li wondered why it was coming at a time like this. Xiaoshang told him that he had heard from Xin that Li wanted to deal with the Black Panther gang. Li confirmed, saying that Blood Panther had already started targeting him and that it was better to take the initiative and attack rather than defend. Xiaoshang explained that the Black Panther gang had repeatedly provoked Longmen 3rd Street, but he had not acted because the three great powers of Haiqing were in a state of balance. Wu Tianqiu controlled the politics, Ning Donghao and the NG group controlled the economy, and Xiaoshang had political and economic power second only to theirs. He said that even though he hated the gang's bullying and seizures, he could not act as long as they did not go too far, because moving against them could force Ning Donghao and Wu Tianqiu into an alliance, or leave him and Ning Donghao weakened, allowing Wu Tianqiu to seize control of Haiqing. Li asked if this meant President Qin did not want the Qin family to get involved. Xiaoshang explained that he wanted Li Yi and Xin to form a new faction to deal with the Black Panther gang instead. Li Yi realized that President Qin was planning a proxy war. Xiaoshang admitted it and said he would provide the money and manpower, while Li Yi and Xin would carry out the plan, which would stop the other two major powers from acting rashly. He added that even if they failed, he could still mediate and protect them. Li Yi admitted that he had not expected such a thorough plan to be made in just one night and felt impressed. Xiaoshang said he would not have bothered if his daughter had not insisted on dealing with the Black Panther gang together with Li Yi, while secretly feeling unhappy about how close they were. Li Yi noticed that President Qin's inner thoughts were too obvious. Qin angrily told her father to leave and then asked Li Yi what he planned to do next. Li Yi said he would accept missions and take every task related to publicly accessible dimensional gateways, as he needed to visit every gateway in Haiqing. Qin agreed and said she would make the arrangements. Li Yi silently thought that once he bonded with those fragments, it would become the darkest hour for the Black Panther gang. Qin calmly explained that every person standing there had been carefully chosen by her, and from that moment on they would form the Shadow Gang under Li Yi's command. The members respectfully greeted both Qin and Li Yi, showing clear loyalty. Qin then mentioned that Li Yi had taken too long to choose a name, so she named the group based on his abilities and teasingly asked if he disliked it. Li Yi accepted the name, and quietly observed that all of them were C rank, realizing that such a group would be powerful anywhere. He questioned why everyone wore masks, and Qin replied that it was to protect their identities and prevent enemies from using their families against them, adding that it also looked cool. Li joked that it was probably because the lead artist was too lazy to draw so many faces. When Qin asked about their next move, Li stated that they would take jobs directly from the Black Panther gang and steal every valuable commission mission. Qin showed concern about handling so many tasks, but Li reassured her that they would only take the profitable ones and leave the rest for his other plans. The scene then shifted to the Black Panther gang, where the leader erupted in anger at his subordinate for allowing a new group like the Shadow Gang to steal all their missions. He demanded to know why nothing had been done and ordered them to deal with the troublemakers. The subordinate admitted that they were unable to act because the Shadow Gang always sent 5 or 6 C-rank advanced members for every mission, while they lacked enough C-rank personnel. Black Panther was shocked and confused about where such a group had come from, and in frustration he threw the man aside and ordered him to spend money to buy exploration slots and send people inside to hunt their target. When told that the upcoming expedition slots were already taken by unidentified individuals, Black Panther roared in fury and ordered him to steal, snatch, or pay any price necessary to get their people in. He warned that if this rare chance to make a fortune was ruined, the responsibility would fall entirely on him. The scene shifted to a quiet room where Jean finished a call and said she understood everything before turning to Lee and informing him that the Black Panther gang had paid a very high price to buy many of the exploration slots they were holding. She asked how he had been so sure they would take the bait. Lee calmly explained that they would never give up the most profitable opportunity of the season, even if it cost them dearly. When Jean said she still did not understand, Lee revealed the unwritten rules of the mining sites, explaining that supervisors and managers secretly hid high-quality ore and rare items and used end-of-season equipment maintenance as a chance to smuggle them out and sell them. In the past, the Black Panther gang accepted missions from the Mercenary Guild to plant scouts and track robbery targets, and since all the goods were illegal, no one ever reported the crimes. Now that this path had been blocked, the gang had no choice but to spend heavily on exploration slots to enter alternate dimensions. Jean pointed out that even selling the slots at a high price only brought them limited profit, but Lee replied that this was only part of the plan and that his recent trips to alternate dimensions had not been wasted. He then revealed that he had already marked all the alternate dimension entrances in Haiching, and could open a small entrance to any of them at any time. He explained that by having their people closely watch those who bought the expensive exploration slots, they could identify the Black Panther gang's true targets. Jean immediately understood and excitedly realized that they could strike at the right moment and take the gang down. Lee reminded her that the existence of these entrances must remain secret, so only a few trusted people would stay on standby with him. Jean eagerly asked to join, saying she loved doing heroic and righteous work, and Lee smiled and agreed, deciding that they would take down the Black Panther gang together. The scene shifted to a moving truck where a man casually spoke to Old Wang about the shipment being worth a lot of money, and Wang assured him that everyone would get their share. As they continued talking, a huge stone suddenly fell in front of the vehicle, cutting them off. Before they could react, more stones flew toward them, causing panic as the truck lost control and slid to a stop. Wang anxiously shouted to ask what had happened and whether the cargo was safe. One of the attackers mocked them, saying the cargo would be fine but their situation would soon turn bad, as stones continued raining down on the miners and forced them to scatter in fear. One man cruelly chased them, shouting for them not to run and clearly enjoying the chaos. At that moment, Lee appeared and calmly stepped in, instantly using his shadow movement technique to close the distance. The attacker shouted in shock and anger, wondering who dared to interfere, but Lee coldly responded that robbery was one thing while killing people without care crossed a line. Before the man could finish his thoughts or react, Lee grabbed him with overwhelming speed and slammed him hard against the wall. The man, now frightened, demanded to know who Lee was and warned him to think carefully, claiming that his brothers nearby would not let him escape if he made another move. Lee calmly mocked the attackers by asking if they were talking about those weak D-rank members, making it clear he felt no threat from them. Jean then asked what should be done with the captured people and suggested killing them all, but Lee rejected the idea and said that letting them die would only make things too easy for Blood Panther. He stated that he had a better plan and coldly grabbed one man by the face, ordering him to return and tell Blood Panther that everything was done by Lee of the Shadow Gang. The scene then shifted to a hospital where Black Panther exploded in rage after hearing the name Shadow Gang and Lee, unable to believe that the miner he once looked down on had become so powerful. His subordinate reported that although their men looked fine on the surface, every one of them had severe internal fractures, and even with the best treatment it would take at least half a year to recover. The cost was enormous, reaching 30 million for just 6 people, and to make matters worse, their other 2 teams had also failed. When Black Panther demanded to know who was responsible, the answer was Lee, which left him shocked and furious because the alternate dimensions were far apart, and it should have been impossible for one person to appear in all of them. The man then showed recorded evidence proving that Lee had personally done it. In the video, Lee casually pointed out that he was being filmed, mocked Blood Panther for having such weak subordinates, and openly challenged him to come and face him directly while mentioning the heavy medical costs. Watching the recording, Black Panther completely lost control and swore to kill Lee. The scene shifted to a quiet warehouse area where Jean asked Lee why they had come to such a place. Lee explained that while he had been secretly following Cui Shihao, he accidentally discovered that the Black Panther gang's warehouse was right next door. He added that they had been ruining Blood Panther's plans for several days, so there was a high chance that Blood Panther would personally lead the next operation. Jean quickly understood and asked if he planned to raid the warehouse while Blood Panther was away. Lee confirmed it, and at that moment he received a call informing him that Blood Panther and his men had already left for alternate dimension number 3. Li told the caller to keep watching them, and then explained to Qin that since Blood Panther was leading the team himself, he would go and harass him to buy time. Qin worried because Blood Panther was a B rank and suggested sending Duan Ao along, but Li refused, saying he had no intention of fighting head-on and that bringing others would only slow him down. He reassured her that he could use the gate to return quickly if he ran into danger, and Qin reminded him to be careful. The scene then shifted to Blood Panther's team inside the alternate dimension, where his subordinates excitedly celebrated their harvest and praised him for his leadership, believing that Li Yi and the Shadow Gang did not even dare to show themselves. Blood Panther coldly dismissed Li Yi as nothing more than a miner with a few C-rank helpers who could not cause real trouble. Just as he spoke, his senses caught something unusual and he suddenly shouted, demanding to know who was there. At that moment, Li Yi calmly revealed himself by lifting a man from the ground with his mana, praising Blood Panther's sharp perception and casually asking why he was so tense, while mockingly calling himself nothing more than a humble little miner. One of the captured men cried in fear and begged Blood Panther to save him, while Li calmly warned that if anyone moved, he could not guarantee the man would remain unharmed. Blood Panther responded without hesitation and launched a fire attack, declaring that they could all die together, causing his own subordinate to scream in despair when the flames struck. In the next instant, Li appeared behind Blood Panther and coldly mocked him for being a boss who would not even spare his own people. Enraged, Blood Panther attacked again and cursed Li for hiding like a rat, while another burning subordinate shouted a warning that the attack had missed. Li casually commented that working under Blood Panther was clearly a very dangerous job. Blood Panther roared that as long as he could kill Li and his people, losing a few subordinates meant nothing, and he unleashed a powerful fire tornado that burst his mana outward. His remaining men fled in panic, but Li stayed calm and unmoved amid the chaos. Blood Panther screamed for Li to come out and stop hiding, but Li knew better than to underestimate a B-rank opponent and decided it was time to leave, quietly wondering what expression Blood Panther would have when he returned. The scene then shifted to Blood Panther rushing back and shouting in shock as he saw what had happened. A trembling subordinate reported that the Shadow Gang and the Qin family's eldest young miss had led the attack, bringing 2 B ranks and more than a dozen C ranks, leaving them powerless to resist. Blood Panther coldly repeated that there was nothing they could do and accepted it with chilling calm. When the man begged for mercy, Blood Panther showed no hesitation and ended his life without remorse. He then realized that Li Yi's sudden rise and large number of helpers were all connected to Qin Xin, and with hatred burning in his heart, he decided that since it had come to this, he would show no mercy at all. Cui Shihao coldly stated that the matter should end there, but Blood Panther erupted in fury and shouted that everything he owned had been destroyed along with the warehouse, a loss worth hundreds of millions. Cui Shihao calmly questioned what he planned to do next and sarcastically asked if he wanted help starting a war with the Qin family. He reminded Blood Panther that even though Qin Shaoshang was temporarily away from Haiqing, Qin Xin was still untouchable and that this was a critical moment for their experiment. He ordered Blood Panther to endure his anger no matter how deep the grievance was. Blood Panther roared that he could not endure it for even a second and declared that he would kill Qin Xin and Li Yi before leaving Haiqing. In response, Cui Shihao summoned his beasts and made it clear that if Blood Panther insisted on courting death, he would silence him on the spot. Blood Panther was forced to kneel, and Cui Shihao warned him not to ruin the larger plan over money, promising that once the experiment succeeded, he would personally help wipe out the Qin family. Blood Panther reluctantly agreed on the surface, but deep inside he burned with humiliation and resentment, thinking that Cui Shihao only spoke so lightly because it was not his money that was lost, and swearing that even without Cui Shihao, he could still deal with Qin Xin. The scene then shifted to a car moving along the road where Qin casually remarked that Li Yi was truly sharp and far more perceptive than most. Duan Ao urged the driver to go faster, joking that the eldest young miss Li Yi. Qin immediately shouted at him in embarrassment, and denied ever saying such a thing. Duan Ao bluntly pointed out that since waking up that morning, Qin had already mentioned Li Yi many times, which she immediately denied, insisting that Li Yi was simply one of the few friends she had and that mentioning him meant nothing. Before the argument could continue, a truck suddenly crashed into their car, and Duan Ao reacted instantly by shielding Qin as a violent explosion shook the ground. Guards rushed over in panic and asked if the eldest young miss was safe, while Duan Ao anxiously checked on her. Qin confirmed that she was unharmed, but at that moment Blood Panther appeared and calmly greeted her, making it clear that he had been waiting for this chance. Duan Ao ordered the guards to protect Qin, and Qin angrily accused Blood Panther of being too arrogant to attack her with so few people. Her expression suddenly changed when she realized something was wrong, and Duan Ao quickly warned that there was a problem with the water splashed on them. Blood Panther confidently explained that he would never act without full certainty and revealed that the liquid was phantom spider venom, powerful enough to knock out even an A rank for hours. As he launched his attack, Duan Ao shouted for Qin to run, but Blood Panther seized him by the throat and mocked his loyalty, claiming that devoted bodyguards never met good ends. Duan Ao screamed in pain as he was burned, leaving the situation dire. The scene then shifted to Li training alone in the forest, calmly cutting wooden stems into pieces as he practiced. Entropic commented that his control over his abilities had become much more refined, and Li replied that he was already C rank and asked to be called by a different name. His attention was drawn to his phone, and he wondered if Qin Xin was calling. Entropic casually dismissed the strength of AC rank, calling it little more than an ant with extra power. At that moment, Blood Panther suddenly appeared on the screen, holding Qin captive and forcing Li Yi to look at who was with him. Li Yi's expression darkened as he immediately confronted Blood Panther, demanding to know what he thought he was doing. Blood Panther coldly declared that what he would do next depended on how important Qin Xin was to Li Yi, giving him two cruel choices between paying 1 billion for her life or watching her be tortured to death. Qin urgently warned Li Yi not to listen and told him it was an ambush, but Li Yi chose without hesitation and agreed to pay the ransom, asking where the exchange would take place. Blood Panther ordered him to bring the money to the warehouse within 1 hour and come alone, threatening that Qin Xin would die if the Qin family was alerted. Entropic advised Li Yi not to go, warning that his current strength was not enough, but Li Yi refused to abandon a comrade and calmly stated that it was still unclear who would die in the end. Later, Li Yi arrived at the warehouse, and Blood Panther mocked his courage while demanding the money. Li Yi insisted on seeing Qin Xin first, and Blood Panther ordered her to be brought out, revealing her hanging helplessly by a rope. Li Yi calmly opened his storage space and delivered the ransom, which Blood Panther's men confirmed was real. After receiving the money, Li demanded Qin Xin's release, but Blood Panther laughed and admitted he had never planned to let Li Yi leave alive. Li revealed that he had expected this betrayal and instantly vanished, causing a violent blast that shook the ground. Blood Panther angrily searched for him, only for Li Yi to appear behind him and launch a sudden attack, which Blood Panther narrowly avoided while mocking his tactics. Li calmly reminded him that playing with fire in a place filled with dust was dangerous, triggering another massive explosion. Amid the chaos, the rope holding Qin Xin snapped and she began to fall, but when she opened her eyes, she found herself safely seated on a flying wyvern. Blood Panther stared in shock at the flying dragon and the entrance to an alternate dimension, realizing that Li had far more tricks than expected and vowing to take everything once he captured him. As reports came in that more than half of their men were injured, Blood Panther ordered everyone who could still move to chase after them, determined not to let them escape. Blood Panther shouted for his men not to let anyone escape as they rushed into the area, while Qin nervously asked what they should do now that the Black Panther gang had broken in. Li remained calm and said this was actually a good chance to let those people help him solve a small problem. He told Qin and Fai Long to hide first and promised that he would handle everything himself before jumping down from the wyvern and reassuring her that he would be fine. Entropic quickly realized that Li had deliberately left the entrance open so the Black Panther gang could be used to help him pass the second level, and Li admitted that was exactly his plan, pointing out that no rule said he had to clear it alone. Entropic commented that Li was good at finding loopholes, and Li replied that the reward was simply too tempting, especially armor that could block a rank attacks, while also noting that the Black Panther gang was cautious enough to be useful. Blood Panther confronted Li directly and mocked him for having nowhere left to run, but Li replied that he had no reason to flee since Qin Xin was already safe and now was the perfect time to deal with him. Blood Panther laughed, and claimed Li had gone mad, urging his men not to fear someone who stood alone and promising cruel rewards once Li was dealt with. Li calmly admitted that he was outnumbered but said the outcome was not decided by numbers alone, then called out to welcome their guests as a door opened and many fierce beasts poured out. He greeted the monsters and invited them to join him in the challenge as they charged forward. One of the men hurriedly tried to form a portal to stop him, but Li countered by unleashing a powerful shadow transformation, smashing into the attack with overwhelming force. The clash shook the area, and Li felt the terrifying strength of a B-rank attack, realizing he could not underestimate it as he dropped to one knee. Blood Panther sneered that blocking a single attack meant nothing and questioned how many more Li Yi could endure in his weakened state. Li Yi calmly answered that one was enough and told him to look around. At that moment, Blood Panther realized that countless monsters had already surrounded him from all sides. Black Panther shouted in rage as Li Yi escaped, and Li Yi ran while telling him to keep playing with the beasts while he left first. Blood Panther realized he had been tricked again, and angrily ordered his monsters out of the way, swearing that he would tear Li Yi to pieces. The scene then shifted to the core area of the second level, where Li Yi stepped out from a portal and checked with Entropic to make sure there was really armor ahead that could resist the rank attacks. Entropic confirmed that it was true and explained that the armor was the reward for clearing the second level. He also asked Li Yi to help Barry steward Jimming properly after dealing with the Black Panther, and Li Yi agreed. Entropic led him forward, and Li Yi examined the armor, noting that it was impressive though not as light as he had imagined. Entropic thought to himself that it was a pity Li Yi was only Shadow Enhancement Tier 2, because even if he were Tier 3, facing armor that could resist the rank attacks would still be challenging. Li Yi teased Entropic about acting strange, and Entropic brushed it off, telling him to take the reward. Suddenly, someone grabbed Li Yi by the throat, calling him master and expressing disbelief that he had returned. The attacker was a heteromorph with a soul form at Shadow Enhancement Tier 2. Li Yi was shocked and demanded to know what was happening. The heteromorph scolded him, saying that he never expected his once exalted master to now inhabit the body of a C rank being. Entropic tried to command the heteromorph to stop, but the attacker ignored him, claiming that his soul had been sleeping inside the armor to await Li Yi's return and prolong his own life. Because Li had returned only as a remnant soul and failed him, the heteromorph declared that he had no choice but to refine Li Yi in order to break through to Shadow Enhancement Tier 3 and use his domain ability to make the armor a vessel for his own soul. Li Yi thought to himself, asking Entropic if he could defeat the heteromorph if he handed over control of his body. Entropic was surprised and asked if Li Yi was not afraid that he would take the chance to fully seize control. Li Yi ignored the question and thought that if Entropic had wanted full control, he would never have returned the body in the first place. With that, Li Yi shouted to begin and released a burst of mana, throwing the heteromorph away. The heteromorph mocked him, saying that with only his remnant soul he had just a rank strength, and that resisting was pointless. Li Yi confidently replied that even at a rank, he was enough to handle him and immediately activated his Shadow second-tier Shadow domain. The heteromorph thought it was just a second-tier bluff and complained that he had not been fully taught how to use Shadow skills, not expecting Li Yi to hold something in reserve. Li Yi then unleashed his Shadow Morph Infinite Sword Array, revealing that he had been holding back much more than the heteromorph realized. The heteromorph rushed forward, claiming that this body could never handle a third-tier skill, but Li Yi was ready to face him head-on. Li Yi suddenly used Shadow Movement and appeared behind the heteromorph, catching him off guard. The heteromorph was shocked by the strange skill but managed to block the attack, mocking Li Yi and claiming that he could not maintain his second-tier state for long. Entropic urgently asked whether Li Yi could still endure it, and Li Yi firmly answered that he was fine and could keep going. The heteromorph sneered that attacks of this level could not break the armor's defense, but Li Yi continued to press forward, determined to force him out. A violent blast shook the ground, and when the dust settled, the heteromorph had blocked the strike with his sword, which shattered into pieces. He then tried to defend with his arms, but Li Yi's punch sent him flying away. Entropic encouraged Li Yi to push a little further, but then quickly realized the danger and warned that if the fight continued, the overloaded energy would burn and destroy both Li Yi's body and soul. The heteromorph mocked Entropic for hesitating over the life of a worthless being and accused him of becoming ridiculous. With his fists clenched and killing intent rising, he declared that since this chance could not be wasted, Li Yi should not blame him for what came next. Heteromorph caught Entropic and declared that he finally had him, mocking that the dog he once raised had bitten him back and that this was the moment he could truly return to life. Li Yi shouted Entropic name in panic, but Entropic calmly told Li Yi to run. Li Yi instead yelled at Heteromorph to let him go. Heteromorph laughed at the scene, mocking how touching it was that one of them feared his soul being burned and could not use full power, while the other was nothing but an ant yet still dared to attack. He threw Li Yi away without mercy. Entropic then coldly told Li Yi that he was only a C rank and should stop being an eyesore and leave at once. Li Yi refused to retreat and spoke with anger, recalling how Entropic had treated him like a slave from the very beginning, forcing him to fight otherworlders and level up, making him obey every command until now. He declared that whether he stayed or left was his own choice. Li rushed forward as mana burst from his body, remembering how he had once absorbed shadow energy to kill the Blood Panther and believing that today he could also help eliminate this traitor. Heteromorph sneered and challenged him, warning that Li's body would not last and would explode from the strain. Li shouted that it was none of his business, but in the next moment Heteromorph vanished. Li felt his body falling apart as pain spread through him. Heteromorph mocked Li again, calling the creature he chose foolish yet adorable, and laughed as he accused Li of choosing suicide. He ordered Entropic to stop struggling and become nourishment for him, laughing loudly as dark mana suddenly gathered in front of him. Heteromorph was shocked as he sensed eternal night forming, an eternal night caused by the shadow domain, something he believed was impossible since he had not finished refining Entropic. As doubt crossed his mind about the true source of this shadow domain, Li stepped forward and calmly reminded him that he had already said he would eliminate him. A screen appeared in front of Li and displayed his current state, showing that he was a human of C rank who had reached the 3rd tier of Shadow Enhancement, possessed Ultimate Shadow Eye, Shadow Jaunt, and the Shadow Domain. As Li understood the information, he realized that the true power of the Shadow Domain came from souls and that all souls slain inside it were turned into shadow energy. He finally understood why Heteromorph feared this power so deeply. Li spoke with cold confidence as he questioned what Heteromorph could do without his armor, then released a mana beam toward him. Heteromorph narrowly dodged the attack, but Li pressed forward and demanded that he come out of the armor. Using the Shadow Domain, Li slammed Heteromorph into the ground with a heavy impact. Heteromorph scoffed and said that even if Li had reached the 3rd tier, he was still only a C rank and that the armor could endure even a rank attacks. Li did not hesitate and calmly decided to change his method, charging straight at him. Heteromorph struck Li with a punch, but Li's body suddenly dissolved into the air, leaving Heteromorph shocked by the reckless move. Before he could react, dark mana surged around him, and he screamed as the shadow energy engulfed his body, cracking and shattering the armor. Li then revealed the truth, explaining that Heteromorph had been hiding inside the armor because it absorbed shadow energy to reduce the damage done to his soul. Heteromorph realized that without the armor, dragging the fight any longer would only make him weaker, but he believed he still held Skyhold within his grasp. As he tried to escape, Li saw through his intent and stopped him, binding him tightly with dark chains formed from shadow energy. Heteromorph warned that Skyhold was now wrapped in his soul and that attacking it would harm Li as well. Li answered calmly and reminded him that souls were nothing more than shadow energy, and now that the armor protection was gone, Heteromorph himself would become nourishment for his advancement. Entropic watched the scene and coldly remarked that Ji-Ming had underestimated Li's hunger for power. As Heteromorph faded away, he shouted a final warning, saying that once Li ascended quickly by devouring him, he would not spare anyone, and that no living being could withstand the test of desire. In that moment, Li screamed as mana exploded around his body, a terrifying surge that made him realize he had stepped into a new realm of strength. He sensed the power clearly and understood that this was what B rank felt like. A screen appeared once more and confirmed his breakthrough, showing that Li had reached B rank while retaining his shadow abilities and shadow domain. With his presence now heavier and more oppressive, Li turned his attention forward and calmly declared that Skyhold was next. Li calmly reflected that this was what Ji-Ming meant by continuing life, realizing that Ji-Ming had used his domain ability to seal his soul inside the armor and turn that mass of metal into a new body. He mocked its dark and filthy state, and felt that absorbing such a soul would only disgust him. He also had no interest in wearing something so large and ugly, deciding instead to treat this as returning a favor. The scene then shifted to another battlefield where a man screamed for help as a snake tightly coiled around him. Black Panther told him to endure for a moment before cruelly throwing fire that burned both the snake and the man together. He coldly mocked the man as useless trash and questioned whether he was even worth saving. At that moment, Li arrived and observed the scene, remarking that this truly showed the strength of AB rank, since even so many behemoths had failed to wear him down. Black Panther shouted Li's name and launched an attack, but Entropic stepped in and casually threw Black Panther away with magic. Black Panther instantly sensed the pressure and realized that the newcomer was an A rank, feeling his heart sink, as he thought that facing Li alone was already hard enough, and now an A rank had appeared as well. Li spoke calmly and pointed out that stepping in like this was simply bullying, then stated that someone of Black Panther level was perfect for him to use as a warm-up. Black Panther sneered inwardly, believing that if he could just grab Li, he might still have a chance, and boldly accepted the challenge. Li expanded the shadow domain, covering the area in darkness. Black Panther mocked him, claiming that all these flashy tricks could not hide the fact that Li was only D rank. Li rushed forward and corrected him, saying he was no longer D rank, then sent Black Panther flying with a single strike. Shocked and angered, Black Panther questioned whether Li was really looking down on him. As their mana violently collided, Black Panther finally sensed the truth and cried out in disbelief when he realized Li had reached B rank so quickly. Li answered calmly that he had all of them to thank, since they had pushed him forward at every step of the way. Black Panther roared that even if Li had reached B rank it meant nothing, claiming that his own strength was the real deal as he charged forward with full force. Li calmly blocked the attack without retreating. Entropic then guided Li, explaining that inside the shadow domain there was no need to rely on personal energy, since the true essence of shadow was to command the surrounding power and turn the enemy's strength against them. Li smiled as he understood, joking that he was still not used to Entropic acting like such a serious teacher. Black Panther sneered at the sight, mocking Li for learning in the middle of battle and shouting that he was no genius before attacking again with killing intent. Li focused and began commanding the surrounding shadow energy, calmly blocking every strike that came his way. Black Panther froze in shock as he realized something was wrong. Li felt the power flowing through him and admitted that the sensation was truly addictive, then released a mana beam toward Black Panther. Black Panther barely dodged and mocked the attack, claiming it had missed, but Li immediately followed up, saying that the dodging had only lined Black Panther face up perfectly for his fist. Black Panther was thrown back and barely managed to steady himself, his mind filled with disbelief as he realized that Li kept using skills while his power only continued to rise instead of fading. Li coldly asked if that was all he had and declared that the game was over. Black Panther shouted that he would take Li down with him and rushed forward in desperation. Li condensed dark mana into a weapon and clashed head-on, cleanly severing both of Black Panther's arms and sending him crashing to the ground. Bleeding and defeated, Black Panther screamed for Li to kill him if he dared. Li stepped closer and calmly replied that death would be far too easy, placing his dagger against Black Panther's neck and stating that at this moment, Black Panther was worth far more alive than dead. Entropic questioned why Li was keeping Black Panther alive instead of killing him. Li calmly explained that he needed him alive to extract more information about Cui Shihao. Black Panther angrily declared that he would rather die than reveal anything. Li responded that he already knew this, but Qin Shaoshang had his own ways of making people talk. Hearing Qin Shaoshang's name, Black Panther panicked and threatened Li, warning that Cui Shihao and the NG group would not let this go. Li answered without fear, stating that even if they did not come looking for him, he would go to them himself. Entropic then offered to take care of the A rank from the NG group as a way of returning a favor. Li refused for now, saying that until they confirmed whether Ning Donghao was involved, it was better not to act, and that revenge was always more satisfying when handled personally. The scene then shifted to another location where Ning asked the three of them to wait, explaining that General Hong would arrive shortly. He mentioned that troops were being mobilized all over the city and asked the city lord if he had any inside information. The city lord admitted he did not know but felt that something major was happening, then turned to Qin Shaoshang and asked if he had heard anything. At that moment, a man reported over the phone that Black Panther had kidnapped Qin Xin that morning, but she was unharmed and Black Panther had already been dealt with. Qin Shaoshang calmly replied that he knew nothing about military matters, then coldly warned Ning Donghao that if he could not keep his dogs under control, he would gladly teach them some discipline himself. Ning questioned Qin Shaoshang about what his words were supposed to mean, showing clear displeasure. Qin Shaoshang coldly warned him that he should hope he was not involved, because if he was, Qin Shaoshang would deal with both him and the matter at the same time. Ning scoffed and accused Qin Shaoshang of overestimating himself, but Qin Shaoshang calmly replied that they could test that claim whenever he wished. At that moment, Hong Hai arrived and spoke in a firm tone, saying that seeing everyone so fired up put him at ease, but reminded them to save that energy for where it truly mattered, especially with Hai Qing possibly facing a major disaster. He explained that he had gathered everyone for a serious matter and asked for the situation to be explained clearly. A man then stepped forward and reminded them that everyone present had become a rank by fighting in the battle against creatures from the level 2-dimensional channel 10 years ago. He stressed that there was no need to repeat how destructive A rank and S rank creatures from that channel were. He explained that the reason the level 2 channel appeared briefly and then vanished back then was still unknown, but the related radiation fluctuations had been monitored ever since. The man continued by revealing that 5 years ago, those fluctuations had reappeared, and that both their frequency and intensity had steadily increased. In the past 3 months alone, 5 spikes had been detected, nearly as strong as those from 10 years ago. Hearing this, the city lord realized the meaning behind the meeting and cautiously asked for confirmation. Hong Hai then stated clearly that this meant it was highly likely that Hai Qing was about to witness the appearance of a level 2-dimensional channel once again. After the meeting, Hong Hai told everyone to return and prepare, warning that if a level 2-dimensional channel truly appeared, it would bring disaster to Hai Qing. He explained that the military had already begun preparations, but hoped that when the time came, the 3 of them would put aside their differences and face the crisis together. Qin Xiaoshang replied that he had no problem with that, as long as certain people stopped making schemes behind his back. Hong Hai then spoke with a hard tone, saying that these were critical times and that if anyone dared to cause trouble for personal gain, he would not hesitate to use extreme measures. He ordered Qin Xiaoshang to return to Hai Qing with them so they could discuss the recent situation on the way, then got into the car and left. After they departed, the city lord remarked that General Hong was no longer even pretending, making it clear that Qin Xiaoshang was firmly on the military side. He warned Ning that Qin Xiaoshang was furious, likely because of the Black Panther gang, and advised him to lie low for a while. Ning pretended to be confused and asked what the Black Panther gang had to do with him. The city lord replied that as long as it did not, everything would be fine, and told Ning to check the news. Later, Cui Shihao contacted Ning and asked for his orders. Ning told him to watch the news, saying that he usually turned a blind eye to his dealings with the Black Panther gang. The broadcast reported that a major crime had occurred, stating that the notorious Black Panther gang had attempted to kidnap the heir of the Qin group. The hostage had been rescued, but Black Panther and the core members were now on the run. Cui Shihao panicked and hurriedly denied any involvement, claiming he was just a nobody who ran errands and would never act without direct orders. Ning coldly warned him that he did not care whether he had to beg or even die, and ordered him to obtain Qin Xin forgiveness and completely cut all ties with the Black Panther gang. Otherwise, not even Ning himself would be able to save him. Cui Shihao could only nod in anger, cursing Black Panther for his stupidity. The scene shifted to Qin Xin as she worried about Duan Ao and told him to hold on, while Li stood beside her and calmly reassured her that the doctors were doing their best and that Duan Ao would survive. Cui Shihao soon arrived and pretended to care about Qin Xin's safety, claiming he never expected Black Panther to act so boldly. Li directly exposed his excuse and mocked him for pretending ignorance, while Cui Shihao denied everything and said his ties with Black Panther had only been business. He promised to cut them off and help eliminate the rest, but Li coldly pointed out that he was only sacrificing a pawn to protect himself. Cui Shihao warned Li to stop, saying the gains were already enough for a lifetime, but Li replied that what he took was only interest and that Cui Shihao's life was the real debt. When Cui Shihao turned to Qin Xin, she gave him no answer, leaving him with no way out. With negotiations broken, Cui Shihao reminded them that without proof he could not be touched and left in anger after threatening them to wait and see. Later, in another hospital, Cui Shihao ordered a doctor to inject the captured Black Panther members with God's blood, ignoring their cries and fear. As the drug took effect, chaos followed, while Cui Shihao coldly imagined the next day news and the destruction that was about to unfold. Later that night, Xiaoshang sat in the car and spoke with curiosity and caution as he asked why General Hong was in such a hurry to see Li. He reflected on how Li had changed in just over a month, going from an ordinary miner to someone capable of fighting a B rank advanced, and he also mentioned the large number of special metal weapons Li had sold. Xiaoshang admitted his confusion, saying that after checking the materials, they did not look special at all. Hong Hai responded with confidence and a hint of mockery, saying Xiaoshang would soon see the true power of those materials in real battle. He remarked that Xiaoshang had grown soft over time and that his instincts were no longer as sharp as those of a young man. The scene then shifted to Li, who greeted General Hong and President Qin with polite humility and questioned their sudden visit to such a small place. Hong Hai showed mild surprise that Li could recognize him, while Li answered calmly and respectfully, saying that failing to recognize such a big figure would cost him dearly. Hong Hai then asked why Li was not inviting them inside. Li replied with courtesy but explained that they had arrived at a bad time. Later, a guard reported that the live feed had been connected. Li spoke calmly but directly, saying that he could not sense any other powerhouses nearby and asked if Hong Hai was really planning to let regular soldiers face an advanced enemy. Hong Hai confirmed it without hesitation and silently observed that Li remained composed and did not question him recklessly. Inside, Li felt disturbed and wondered if Hong Hai was simply crazy or if he truly saw these soldiers as disposable, yet he could tell that Hong Hai was not bluffing. With a single order from Hong Hai, the operation began. The soldiers responded sharply and moved into formation, announcing the positioning of the attack squad and the drone defense squad. As Li watched the screen, he felt a chill when he recognized the enemies as members of the Black Panther gang whose bones he had once shattered, yet they now appeared fully healed. He sensed that something was very wrong with their condition. Entropic also noticed it and expressed doubt, suggesting it might be linked to that thing, though he found it hard to believe it could appear here. Gunfire erupted as the soldiers attacked, but the enemy countered with lightning. The soldiers reacted quickly, activating the drone defenses as drones formed a protective shield around them. They locked onto their target and launched a counterattack while maintaining formation and steadily advancing. Watching this, Li realized the terrifying level of the equipment, from the defensive drone shields to bullets capable of harming C-rank advanced, and he questioned whether all of this could really have been created using the materials he had provided. Xiaoshang turned to General Hong in shock and asked if this was the result of those materials. Hong Hai answered with certainty, saying that with enough resources, they could overturn the current order. Li acknowledged that the soldiers were indeed impressive, but as he continued to observe the battlefield, he noticed that one enemy had slipped through the net. Hong Hai explained calmly that the enemy Li was facing had not accidentally slipped through the net, but was someone he had deliberately saved for him. When the injected man suddenly attacked, Li immediately reacted and used his shadow technique, boldly asking if they wanted to see what he was capable of. The injected man charged again with pure killing intent. Li felt regret for the damage that would be done to Qin Xing's villa, and in the clash, the surrounding stones shattered. Watching closely, Hong Hai judged that Li Yi's strength should already be at B rank and possibly close to a rank. Xiaoshang thought this was an exaggeration, but Hong Hai dismissed it, noting that Li Yi was probably not even using his full power yet. During the fight, Li Yi questioned the injected man about his sudden rise to B rank, suspecting some form of doping. The injected man had lost all reason and attacked wildly, screaming that he was no longer human. Li decided there was no need to spare him and chose to hide part of his true strength in front of the two observers, believing his Tier 1 power was enough to finish the fight. With a decisive strike, he ended the battle. Hong Hai admitted that he had once thought reports about Li were exaggerated, but now realized they had underestimated him. Li then questioned why Hong Hai had come at such a late hour, saying it could not be just to help deal with minor trouble. Hong Hai revealed that the military equipment used by the soldiers had been derived from the great sword Li had provided, and his main purpose was to get Li to supply more weapons or materials. Li suggested that the military should be able to synthesize the materials on their own since they were already using them. Hong Hai said that was no longer the main issue because time was running out. He explained that a level 2-dimensional channel could appear near Haiqing at any moment, and with the current strength of the city's military and advanced fighters, they might not be able to handle it. Li felt a heavy pressure in his heart and sensed Qingtian's rage the moment the words level 2 channel were mentioned. Hong Hai stressed that if they wanted to avoid civilian deaths, their only hope was for Li to have enough materials to arm the troops. Li agreed to find a way to gather the weapons and promised to give an answer within 3 days, though he could not guarantee the amount he could provide. Hong Hai reassured him that he would not work for nothing, and while he could not offer money, he could give Li Yi a position in the military or even arrange for him to become the Qin family's son-in-law and take over the Qin group. Li Yi immediately rejected the idea. Xiaoshang, listening nearby, was furious at the thought of Hong Hai selling off his daughter and threatened both him and Li Yi in his thoughts. Li Yi quickly explained that helping Haiqing was his duty and told them not to worry about payment. Hong Hai asked again if he truly did not want to join the Qin family, but Li Yi calmly said he preferred to handle such matters on his own. Later, Qin Tian appeared and expressed shock about the level 2 channel, concluding that the enemies from earlier had been injected with God's blood and could not believe that such a channel could open so quickly. Li Yi tried to question him about his earlier reaction, but Qin Tian warned that a level 2 channel was not something a mere B rank could interfere with, and told him to stay away if he did not want to die. Li pressed further, demanding to know what existed inside a level 2 channel and why Qin Tian was so afraid. Qin Tian revealed that such a channel could release hordes of A-rank creatures and even terrifying S-rank beings. The scene shifted to the temporary military base in Haiqing, where Hong Hai firmly told Xiaoshang to leave Black Panther and the bodies to the military and stay out of the matter. Xiaoshang felt confused by this decision, but Hong Hai calmly explained that according to the records, the mining accident involving Li Yi's parents should have ended with the NG group paying a fine, yet they went as far as silencing witnesses. He also pointed out that the assassins from that night were clearly controlled by an unknown drug, proving that the NG group had serious hidden problems. If Ning Donghao was truly involved, it would become troublesome for the Qin family to handle, so it was safer to let the military take over. At the same time, Hong Hai admitted that he also intended to use this chance to make Li Yi owe the military a favor. The scene then shifted to Li Yi as he questioned whether completing the third-level trial would further increase his strength. Qin Tian explained that advancing beyond B rank became harder with each step and that the third-level trial would not push him into a rank. Instead, it would grant access to the Qin Tian Tower's medicine and weapon resources, which could be considered an endless supply if Li Yi intended to use weapon or to help humanity. Hearing this, Li Yi eagerly suggested starting the third-level trial at once, but Qin Tian stopped him and said there was something he needed to explain first so Li Yi could decide properly. Qin Tian revealed that the entire alternate dimension was actually a massive prison, far larger than Li Yi's world, and it was divided into 3 layers. The outer layer held B rank and lower criminals and was the area connected to the current alternate dimension portals. The middle layer held A rank and S rank criminals and was linked to the level 2 channels. The inner layer imprisoned high-level convicts whose power went beyond human ranks and were known as warlords, gate lords, and monarchs. He explained that the mission of the Entropic clan was to guard the gate to the other world and prevent these criminals from escaping. Li then asked why the alternate dimension channels had appeared in the first place. Qin Tian answered that a traitor had emerged within the Entropic clan and had joined forces with the inner layer convicts to start a riot. They attempted to seize control of the gate to escape the cruel prison environment. When the chaos could not be stopped, Qin Tian was forced to seal the gate and wait for reinforcements, but millions of years passed without help arriving. His power slowly weakened until he could no longer maintain the seal, and 10 years ago the outer gate finally shattered, causing the alternate dimension channels to appear. After hearing this, Li Yi understood the cause but questioned what it had to do with taking the third-level trial. Qin Tian then revealed the real danger, explaining that completing the trial would brand Li Yi with the soul imprint of the Entropic clan. This mark would make him the sworn enemy of every creature from the other world, and they would hunt him relentlessly. Li responded without hesitation, saying that if that was the concern, then refusing the imprint would mean standing aside while the creatures from the level 2 channel hunted Qin Tian and destroyed Hai Qing. He stated that he was no saint, but he refused to be a coward who waited to die, and even if the enemy was stronger, he would rather charge forward and fall fighting. Qin Tian scolded him for being an overly confident B-rank brat but ultimately agreed to go along with him. Li laughed it off and teased that Qin Tian looked better when he was not so serious. Qin Tian led Li into the third level and explained that this place was the core of the entire Qin Tian Tower, known as the Sea of Souls. He told him that the soul fragments of Entropic clan heroes who had fallen in battle over millions of years were gathered there. To fully control the tower, Li had to gain their approval. Qin Tian warned that the process would be extremely painful, but this soul baptism was the only way for Li to obtain a second shadow skill, an ability awakened after the soul was refined. He explained that everyone awakened something different and shared that his own ability was Shadow Clone, which allowed him to split into multiple bodies and continue existing as long as one clone survived. Li asked about Qin Tian's main body, and Qin Tian answered vaguely, saying it might still exist somewhere or might have already turned to ash. He urged Li to enter and said he was curious about what kind of ability Li would awaken. Li replied calmly that he would try not to disappoint him, while Qin Tian silently felt that this little B rank had never disappointed him before and might awaken a power completely different from the rest of the Entropic clan. As Li stepped forward, he sensed the soul fragments around him and felt shock as visions unfolded before his eyes. He saw Entropic warriors fighting desperately against overwhelming enemies, shouting that even if no one remembered the Entropic clan, they would defend the gate to the other world to the death. They declared that even the weakest among them was not a coward and that none of them feared dying, swearing to never let the enemy advance even a single step. Li realized that this was the true battle they had once fought, a war completely unknown to the outside world. Powerful mana suddenly surrounded him, and an entropic voice questioned him, pointing out that every fallen warrior there had been far stronger than him, and mocking that a mere B rank like him had no right to take part in such a war. Li answered firmly that even if he was only B rank, it did not matter, because he also had people he wanted to protect and convictions he was willing to fight for. The entropic presence mocked him and asked if he did not sound ridiculous, but Li stood his ground and said that even if the enemy was thousands or tens of thousands of times stronger, he would not run and would fight to the very end. He declared that even if his small power could only create a single ripple in a massive tide, he would still give everything he had. Outside, Qin Tian sensed a violent emotional surge and felt shock, realizing that something extraordinary was happening to Li. An enemy appeared and attacked Li, mocking him for overestimating himself. Li narrowly avoided the strike, while the enemy claimed that his strength was born from Li's fear and questioned how mere conviction could resist him. As Li blocked the next attack, he answered with clarity and resolve, saying it was not just him, because every soul present shared the same will. He felt that all of them were willing to give their lives to protect what they believed in, making them real, while the enemy was nothing more than his own inner demon. As the enemy began to shatter, Li realized the truth and calmly stated that it was not even a demon, but only a passing thought that had once crossed his mind. He sensed the souls of the entropic clan surrounding him and understood that their protection was becoming a blessing for him. At that moment, a message appeared before him, announcing soul protection, a commander ability that enhanced the combat and defense of all followers and granted full access to the Qin Tian Tower's medicine and weapon resources. Qin Tian appeared and commented with amazement that Li continued to surprise him. Li then noticed a strange door and asked what it was. Qin Tian explained that it was the alternate dimension entrance to the entropic clan's armory and medical storage. Curious, Li suggested checking it out, and Qin Tian revealed that the weapons and recovery potions stored there were enough to support a war involving hundreds of thousands of people. He added that the glowing areas were all filled with ore, meaning the supply Li needed to forge weapons was practically limitless. Li felt as if he had struck the jackpot and jokingly asked if the remaining levels also held such rewards. Qin Tian replied that the 4th and 5th levels were only combat simulations of the 2nd and 3rd layers of the Otherworld prison, meant to improve Li's fighting ability, and they held no rewards. When Li asked about the 6th level, Qin Tian refused to explain and said Li was not qualified to know, hoping he would never have the chance to open it. Li felt that Qin Tian was being mysterious again and guessed that the final level might simply be empty, while Qin Tian silently endured his thoughts. The scene then shifted elsewhere, where a doctor reported to Cui Shihao that the injected men with God's blood had all been eliminated by the military and that Black Panther was being held in a secret military prison. Cui Shihao reacted with rage, realizing that Black Panther was still alive and could expose everything. Without hesitation, he ordered the immediate charging of the Level 2 channel. The doctor hesitated and warned that the surrounding area had not been evacuated, but Cui Shihao coldly dismissed civilian lives and demanded action. The doctor nodded and activated the process. Soon after, chaos broke out among the miners as they stared in terror at a strange phenomenon forming nearby. Cries echoed inside a growing mana barrier as people screamed for help and tried to escape. Outside the barrier, others shouted in fear that everyone trapped inside was doomed and urged each other to run as the glowing barrier continued to expand. A doctor reported that the radiation leaking from the Level 2 channel had already spread 10 kilometers, though the concentration was still within a controllable range. Cui Shihao ordered all communications to be blocked and the alternate dimension entrance sealed, making sure not a single word leaked out. He calculated that the small alternate dimension would not be able to contain the radiation for long and that within 36 hours it would begin spreading outward, drawing outside attention. When he learned that the Level 2 channel would fully open in 48 hours, he decided to keep everyone too busy to interfere during that time. He coldly ordered the release of the swarm stationed at the NG Group's 3 mining sectors and openly declared that since Ning Donghao had been investigating him, he would turn Ning Donghao into a public enemy. The scene then shifted to Hong Hai, who asked Li how much ore he had brought. Li answered that it was around 600 tons, which Hong Hai praised as generous before handing him a file. Li learned that it was Black Panther's testimony, confirming that his parents had not died in a mining accident but had been killed by the Black Panther gang under Cui Shihao's orders to hide a certain truth. Li demanded to know what they were trying to conceal, but Hong Hai admitted that the details were still unclear and required further investigation. When Li pressed him about whether Cui Shihao had been arrested, Hong Hai revealed that Cui Shihao had already gone missing and that the others implicated had vanished as well. He reminded Li that he was not part of the military, and that much information could not be shared with him. Li then asked about Ning Donghao, But Hong Hai said the investigation results were inconclusive and warned that even if Ning Donghao were guilty, Li Yi's current status would only bring him endless trouble if he acted. Li Yi asked for advice, and Hong Hai explained that a man's status determined what he was allowed to do. He suggested joining the military, saying that with the military as his backing, even someone like Ning Donghao could be dealt with freely. Li sensed that Hong Hai wanted more than just his enlistment. Hong Hai brushed this off and said that once Li Yi joined, he would be family, protected by the military, and that it would not be proper for him to charge them for valuable resources like, or if they needed it. Before Li could respond, an assistant interrupted with an urgent report. Hong Hai ordered the video feed to be displayed, revealing that multiple insect swarm invasions had broken out across Haiqing. Seeing the affected areas, Li Yi's heart sank when he noticed Longmen Hospital among them, the same place where Duan Ao was staying. Panic surged through him as he immediately called Qin Xin and urged her to evacuate Duan Ao at once. As danger struck the hospital, Li shouted for her to get out immediately, knowing that the situation had already spiraled out of control. Chaos erupted inside the hospital as a guard shouted warnings and threw himself forward to hold back the insected, urging Qin Xin and Duan Ao to escape. Duan Ao weakly told Qin Xin to be careful as civilians fled in panic. Qin Xin was confused and frightened, unable to understand why insectids had appeared inside the hospital. Duan Ao urged her to leave first and not worry about him, but she refused, saying she would not abandon him. In the next moment, a monster struck her and sent her flying. Even after being knocked down, Qin Xin struggled to her feet. She shouted that even without combat skills, she was still AB rank advanced and could not run away and leave others behind. She rushed forward again but was struck once more and thrown aside, leaving the guard shouting her name in alarm. Far away, Li felt intense unease and realized Qin Xin was likely under attack. With no time to hesitate, he decided to try the new skill he had just awakened and reached out to her through their connection, calling her name and urging her to stand up. Qin Xin answered weakly and asked if he trusted her. Li replied without hesitation that he did, and encouraged her to show those insectids what she was made of. Fueled by his words, Qin Xin gathered her strength and attacked, slamming the monster to the ground. Shock filled her as she realized she had actually done it. Li appeared in time to catch her, lightly praising her strength. Overcome with fear and relief, she broke down crying and clung to him, admitting that she had truly believed she was about to die and would never see him again. Li comforted her and promised that it would never happen, saying he would always protect her. Duan Ao dryly interrupted them, asking if they could help him down before getting too emotional. Later, Qin Xin drank a recovery potion and stared in disbelief as her wounds healed instantly. Duan Ao was equally amazed by its effect. Soon after, a man approached them urgently and begged Qin Xin to help rescue a trapped medical team. He explained that they were stuck inside the Sector 7 alternate dimension mine, which was now crawling with insectids. Qin Xin was shocked, since those mining areas were supposed to be fully cleared. Li immediately recognized the danger and pointed out that Sector 7 mine belonged to the NG group. At the entrance of the mine, an announcer repeatedly declared that the mine was collapsing and ordered all unauthorized personnel to leave immediately, warning everyone not to gather at the entrance. The crowd reacted in anger and panic, shouting that their family members were still trapped inside and accusing the NG group of lying, insisting that the danger was clearly caused by insectids and not a collapse. Some people begged to be allowed in to rescue their loved ones, arguing that every moment of delay increased the danger. The announcer responded harshly, denying the existence of insectids and insisting it was only a collapse. He accused the crowd of spreading rumors and threatened force if they continued causing trouble. One man cried out that his brother had sent him a video proving insectids were inside and questioned why rescue was being blocked even if it was a collapse. Instead of responding, the announcer ordered the arrest of those spreading rumors. Qin Xin arrived at the scene and mocked how the NG group abused its power. The announcer immediately challenged her, but Qin Xin demanded to know whether he would move aside or be forced to do so. He warned her that this was not Longmen 3rd Street territory and accused her of overstepping. Qin Xin firmly replied that her people were trapped inside and that saving them was not overstepping at all. The announcer threatened that if she forced her way in, the NG group would show no respect to Longmen 3rd Street. At that moment, Li silently appeared behind the announcer and calmly pressed a dagger to his neck, suggesting it would be easier if he simply ordered his men to let them through. The announcer panicked and revealed his identity as the vice president of the NG group. Li dismissed this and said that as a mere E-rank miner with no background, he was not afraid of the NG group. When someone tried to attack Li, he calmly drifted back and avoided the strike. Ning Donghao soon arrived and demanded to know what was happening. The vice president rushed to complain, accusing Qin Xin of spreading rumors about insectids and trying to force her way into the mine. Ning Donghao questioned Qin Xin and demanded an explanation. She explained that a medical team was trapped inside and had reported the mine was full of insectids. Ning Donghao rejected this claim, stating that the NG group had spent 3 years clearing the mine before receiving the permit, and said he would ignore the matter out of respect for Qin Xiaosheng. Li stepped forward and questioned whether Ning Donghao was truly fooled by his subordinates, or simply did not care about the lives of ordinary people. Ning Donghao angrily struck the ground and told Li it was not his place to lecture him. Li calmly pointed out that the mine entrance was right behind him and suggested he verify it himself. Ning Donghao refused, calling it baseless nonsense, and saying he would not waste time checking. At that moment, Qin Tian asked Li if he wanted him to handle the situation, but Li refused and said there was no need because Ning Donghao was about to be humiliated. As he spoke, Li quietly opened a portal, while Ning Donghao sensed something strange and wondered what that sudden sound was. A monster suddenly appeared from a portal, but Ning Donghao immediately killed it using his gravity manipulation magic. Li realized there was no need for Ning to verify anything because the threat had already come straight to him. The crowd outside erupted in shouts, confirming that insectids were indeed inside the mine and recording videos as proof to warn others. The announcer tried to maintain control, ordering everyone to stay put and to seize any phones that were recording. Li confronted Ning Donghao and demanded if he was still going to stop them from saving the trapped people. Ning hesitated but then ordered his guards to stop blocking the way and to enter the mine to clear out the insectids. Li told Qin Xin and Duan Ao to stay behind while he went in to save the trapped people. Qin Xin urged him to be careful, and he nodded. Inside the mine, people reported that the number of insectids was far greater than expected, with far too few rescuers to handle them. Ning Donghao instructed his advanced fighters to come as backup, but Li criticized them for waiting, saying the longer they delayed, the lower the chances of survival for the trapped people. The guards worried that Ning's status was too valuable to risk, but Li scolded them for losing their nerve and insisted that he would go in himself to save them. Ning Donghao tried to stop him, pointing out that he was only a C rank, but Li Yi's mana flared as he shouted back and charged into the mine, using his shadow jaunt technique to kill many insectids with ease. Qin Tian noticed something strange about the insects, and Li agreed, feeling that these insectids were different from any he had fought before. He activated his Shadow Morph Greatsword technique, shaking the ground with his mana and striking the monsters. Li asked in shock what God's blood was, and Qin Tian calmly explained that it was a toxin that could force any living creature to gain terrifying combat power. He said the toxin pushed the user into a berserk state and kept burning their life until they died from exhaustion. Qin Tian believed there had to be a mother bug nearby that was infected with it, since he had seen such things before. He recalled that the offspring of infected insectids could sometimes be born directly as a ranks. Li questioned how such a dangerous toxin had ended up there, but before Qin Tian could answer, Li cut him off and said that figuring out the cause could wait because saving people mattered more. The scene then shifted to a dark cave where trapped people were shaking in fear as the noise outside kept growing louder. One man trembled and said that the sound was terrifying and wondered if the bugs had already found them, begging for someone to save them because he did not want to die. A doctor tried to calm everyone down and told them to hold on, firmly believing that someone would definitely come for them. At that moment, a huge monster suddenly crashed into the cave, smashing through the wall, and before anyone could react, Li stepped on the monster's body and coldly said that he had finally found it. The people erupted in cries of relief, shouting that an advance had arrived and that they were saved, desperately calling out for Olju. Ning watched the scene in disbelief and thought that Li was supposed to be only a C rank, yet he was handling advanced insectids with ease. Ning felt shocked as Li fought so many enemies alone without any sign of his strength dropping, and he could not help but wonder if Li had already reached B rank or was even close to a rank. Qin Tian suddenly warned Li that the iron door on his left felt strange and that something was wrong inside. A man immediately panicked and shouted at Li, asking why that kid was heading there and ordering him to stay away, saying it was their group's warehouse for important items. Li sensed the presence of the mother bug behind the door and became even more certain. The man angrily yelled again, demanding that Li remove his hands and threatening him by saying he could never afford the loss if the items inside were damaged. Li calmly questioned him and wondered since when the NG group had started researching insectoids. The man reacted fiercely and accused Li of making wild accusations, but Li pressed on and suggested opening the door to see the truth. Ning then stepped forward and ordered the door to be opened. The man hesitated and explained that only the supervisor knew the password and that he could not contact him at all. Li said that the problem was simple and that he would use a rough method instead. He slashed the iron door again and again until it finally broke open. When he saw the dead bodies of miners inside, his expression turned cold and furious as he mocked the idea of important items. A painful thought struck his mind as he wondered if this was how his parents and Uncle Hao had been killed. His anger exploded as he shouted that these miners were living people and questioned whether their lives were truly so worthless in the eyes of the NG group. He directly called out Ning Donghao and demanded an answer. A man suddenly shouted in disbelief when he recognized an ID tag, realizing it belonged to old Wang, who was said to have died in a mine collapse 2 years ago, yet his tag was found here. Ning was shaken and angrily demanded to know what was really happening. Li coldly pointed out that the truth was obvious, and said that someone had been feeding the miners to the mother bug as food. Ning turned furious and shouted at the man, ordering him to explain everything clearly. The man broke down and claimed he had only done it for the benefit of the NG group, explaining that 3 years ago they finally acquired the mine but later discovered a hidden mother bug underground. To avoid affecting the mine's operations, he chose this method. Li Yi's mana surged around him as his anger exploded, and he accused the man of feeding living people to that disgusting bug. Ning tried to stop Li Yi and questioned what he thought he was doing, while the man desperately begged Ning to save him. Ning then said this was an internal matter of the group and insisted it was not Li Yi's place to interfere. Li Yi responded sharply and said that if not 1,000, then at least hundreds of miners had died there, and questioned whether Ning was still trying to protect his vice president. The surrounding miners erupted in rage, shouting that the man was a murderer and demanding justice, declaring that miners were human too and that those responsible should be punished severely. The man panicked and shouted at the guards to do something, ordering them to drive the miners away, while insisting to Ning that he had no choice. Chi Tian calmly asked Li Yi if he should kill the scum himself. Li Yi stopped him and said there was no need, stating that this was a perfect opportunity and that the man should also experience what it felt like to become food for the bugs. The man desperately tried to defend himself and told Ning that although the mother bug was only B rank, once its life was threatened it would enter a berserk state and reproduce wildly. He warned that when that happened, the mine would be sealed off and the NG group would suffer losses that could never be repaired. Ning clenched his fist and angrily shouted that the man was only worried about his own position in the group. At that moment, a violent blast shook the ground, and the mother bug suddenly appeared. The man screamed in terror when he saw it and tried to flee, crying that he did not want to die, but the monster caught him easily. He screamed for Ning to save him, but Ning coldly said that his existence only brought shame to the group and told him to go to hell together with the beast. In the same instant, Ning struck and killed both the man and the mother bug. Li Yi calmly spoke afterward and pretended to be surprised, wondering how the mother bug had rushed out so suddenly. He then expressed fake concern and said it was fortunate that Ning had not been injured, since that would have been troublesome. Ning stared at him and asked if Li Yi had been the one who forced the mother bug out. Li Yi casually admitted that he was only helping to deal with the mother bug, but mocked that he did not expect the NG group to have not only disobedient subordinates, but even unruly bugs. He then warned Ning not to act recklessly and advised him to save his strength, reminding him that the media already knew what had happened and that he should think carefully about how to explain it. Ning glared at Li Yi with hatred and vowed that sooner or later he would make him pay the price. Li Yi replied calmly and said that he would be waiting. Li Yi calmly said that the NG group would probably just apologize, pay some money, and let everything pass. He then brought the topic back to God's blood and asked Qin Tian to explain it clearly. Qin Tian said that God's blood only existed in the forbidden land of the Blood Clan, which was in the 3rd layer. He said it should have been impossible for it to appear here. Li Yi was confused and asked about the Blood Clan, saying he had never heard of them. Qin Tian explained that even the weakest among them were S rank, which was why they were imprisoned in the inner layer of the Otherworld prison. Li Yi was shocked and asked if even their newborns were S rank. Qin Tian clarified that the Blood Clan was not a true race but a name for creatures that adapted to God's blood. He said not everyone survived, but those who did became at least S rank. Li Yi thought about the danger if a member had escaped, but Qin Tian denied it and said the world would have been destroyed if that happened. Qin Tian left in the middle of their conversation, saying Li Yi's mating partner had arrived. Soon after, Qin arrived excitedly, and said she was moving in with Li Yi. He was startled and said it might be a bad idea because her father would be angry. Qin ignored him and complained that her father was hiding new skills from her to keep her from getting stronger. Li told her she was already strong as AB rank advanced and reminded her she had even defeated AD rank in sector before. Qin said she did not need comfort and admitted she knew Li had used a buff skill on her back then. She said even with help she was only slightly stronger than a normal person and firmly said she wanted to become stronger so she would not be a burden to him. Li gently patted Qin's scene and told her she had never been a burden to him. She looked up and asked softly if that was really true. Nearby, Xiaoshang watched angrily, thinking Li should be careful and blaming Duan Ao for not protecting her properly. Li then casually said that although Qin's scene was not a burden, her father definitely was. Xiaoshang quickly changed his tone and told his daughter to trust him, insisting there was no secret way to awaken skills. Qin Xin shouted back that he was lying because she had heard him talking about it with Uncle Hong. Xiaoshang panicked and said the matter was classified. Qin Xin refused to go home unless he told her, and Xiaoshang finally agreed to explain. He revealed that there was a way to advance quickly and awaken new skills. 10 years ago, during a battle against the level 2 channel, a few people had advanced and awakened new skills after long exposure to high concentration radiation. Those cases were rare, and the survival rate was less than 1%, which was why he had never told her. Li realized this might mean the level 2 channel that could appear soon was man-made. Xiaoshang admitted he and General Hong suspected Cui Shihao's experiments might be an attempt to open a level 2 channel, but it was unlikely because it would require too many people willing to risk death. Elsewhere, Cui Shihao asked Matt if the people below looked afraid of dying. Matt said they seemed normal, but Cui Shihao explained they were terrified and only kept working because they believed the radiation would make them advance instead of killing them. In a cage, a patient begged Cui Shihao for medicine, claiming he was a rank and useful. Cui Shihao coldly said without the medicine they would die even if they became S rank, and added that if their raw materials regenerated faster, they could have turned more people into S rank and built an army strong enough to conquer the world. The system announced that radiation levels were rising rapidly and had reached 100%, signaling that the level 2 channel was fully open and all systems were functioning normally. Cui Shihao felt a wild surge of energy inside him for the first time in years, and his subordinates cheered in excitement, celebrating their success. Suddenly the system warned of a massive influx of alien creatures, and people panicked as they realized the beasts were of the S rank. Cui Shihao remained calm, reminding everyone that they all had God's blood in their veins and believed the beasts would not attack them. Matt warned that if they ignored the creatures, they could break into Haiqing City. Cui Shihao smiled at the chaos, thinking it was perfect that the animals would fight the city's people while he could grow under the radiation, and soon become an S rank to redefine Haiqing's order. In the city, officers told everyone to stay alert and check the perimeter, and a soldier reassured them that their patrols kept the area safe. Suddenly, a thunder wolf of a rank appeared, and the soldiers panicked, calling for command and reporting that Patrol Squad 6 was under attack. Meanwhile, Xiaoshang begged Qin Xin to come back with him, but she refused. Qin Tian and Li sensed that something was wrong. Qin Xin asked Li what was happening, and he realized a B-rank tiger wolf was nearby and told Duan Ao to protect her. Li rushed forward, slashing his sword and throwing the beast away. Xiaoshang was shocked to see a B-rank beast and asked how it had appeared, while Li explained that it was not just in one place and that he could sense the presence of more beasts inside the city. The scene moved to the military Haiqing temporary command post where chaos had erupted. Soldiers shouted that squads 2, 3, and 4 had been attacked and that the beast race was assaulting the 3rd defense zone. Most of the beasts were being held at the outer perimeter, but 2 defensive lines had already been broken. Traces of a rank beasts were found in multiple places in the city center. Xiaoshang realized that the number of beasts was enormous and thought of it as a beast tide. Li wondered where all the beasts were coming from. At that moment, Hong Hai arrived and told Xiaoshang to come with him to the frontline command post while instructing Xin to return to Longmen 3rd Street since there were no beasts there yet, but he feared trouble without a strong fighter guarding it. Qin Xin asked Li if he was coming with her, but he said he was fine with whatever. Hong Hai told Li to stay and that he had other plans for him. Li handed Xin a small wyvern and told her it might still be useful in a pinch. She agreed and told him to be careful and that she would wait for his return. Hong Hai warned Tu Young that the beast tide was serious and even with heavy weapons, The S rank and A rank fighters would have to hold the fort at the front lines. Li told Hong Hai to just say what he wanted and asked why he had shown him all the feeds. Hong Hai explained that some beasts had broken into the military academy, and he wanted Li to help the soldiers and rescue the students. Li agreed without hesitation. Hong Hai asked if he was not going to ask what rank the beasts were, but Li said there should only be 1 or 2 A ranks, and he could handle them as long as he did not face them all at once. Hong Hai said he would await Li's good news. Xiaoshang complained about being stopped and wanted to teach Li a lesson, but Hong Hai warned him that he, the future father-in-law, might not be a match for Li. Xiaoshang insisted he could beat him, but Hong Hai realized that Li had the power to even stand against an S rank. The scene then shifted to the military academy where a boy complained that the beasts were too cunning and kept ambushing their search and rescue teams. He said that if students were not inside, he would have leveled the place with artillery long ago. Another soldier reported that reinforcements from HQ had arrived, but according to the files, the new arrival was only an E rank minor. The boy was shocked and angry, saying that he and his partner were B ranks and had suffered heavy casualties leading their teams, and he could not understand what an E rank could do. Another boy assumed the new arrival was just a rich kid trying to pad his resume and wanted him kicked out. Suddenly a soldier warned that a beast was behind their tent. Li rushed forward and swiftly killed the beast with multiple slashes of his weapon. The boy was startled and could not believe what he had seen. Li scolded them for questioning him despite his awareness and skill. The soldiers confirmed that the files really listed him as an E rank minor, yet he had instantly killed a B rank. Li told them to stay on guard and leave the rescue to him. Li noticed that the beasts were very smart, hiding in the dark and waiting for the right moment to attack, which explained why the search and rescue teams kept getting ambushed. Qin Tian remarked that the beasts were even smarter than insectoids, and that at S rank their intelligence was no different from a human's. Li asked if that was a compliment or an insult, and then spotted a boy facing a beast. The boy tried to use a C rank human skill called metal forging to form a sword, but it was not very effective. He shouted that he would fight to the death but was immediately thrown into a wall by the beast, and cried out in frustration, thinking his skill was useless and that he was just trash. Li encouraged him, saying that being trash depended on what he did, not what others said, and asked if he wanted to go to the rescue team's base for shelter or come with him to save more people. The boy held out his hand and agreed to go with Li, explaining that he knew how to find the students who were hiding. Li welcomed him and introduced himself, and the boy replied that he was Luohe, a student from the logistics class. The scene shifted to a room where Wu Hao mocked Luohe and doubted that he could find help, claiming that a loser like him had probably been eaten before getting far. Another boy angrily confronted Wu Hao for saying such things, but Wu Hao insisted he was right and said that a C rank with a useless skill going out alone was no different from suicide. One boy regretted not going with Luohe to find help instead of listening to Wu Hao, but Wu Hao argued that staying behind to protect everyone was the most logical plan since they were too weak. At that moment, Li arrived and mocked Wu Hao for making cowardice sound righteous. Wu Hao gathered mana in anger, but Li struck first and knocked him away. Wu Hao tried to threaten him by mentioning his father, yet Li said he did not care and warned him to stop talking nonsense. Luohe then appeared with a smile and said he had returned safely thanks to Li's saving and healing him. The students were overjoyed to see Luohe alive and felt hope after realizing someone had arrived. Li told them not to misunderstand, saying he was not there to save them but to teach them how to become real soldiers, how to find their comrades, form combat squads, and fight their way out. The students trembled as they realized there were many B-rank beasts outside, and even trained soldiers would struggle to fight them. Li shouted at them, reminding them that they were cadets of the military academy and soldiers, not civilians. He asked if they were really going to hide and wait to be saved while abandoning their comrades. He told them that what they needed to do now was follow him, find the other students, and fight the beasts together. He assured them that he would do everything he could to keep them safe and instructed them to use their skills to turn their swords into arrows and large riot shields. The students nodded and followed his lead. Luo quickly created weapons using his magic technique, and Li guided every student on how to fight. He told those who were not advanced to use compound bows to harass the beasts from a distance, swapping normal arrows for special ones that could damage the creatures. He assigned a D-rank strength type to act as a tank and gave a blade to one student to be the main attacker alongside him. Wu Hao scoffed at the idea of being a main attacker, claiming his skill was useless beyond being a blacksmith, but Li Yi ignored him and told everyone to pick up their weapons and fight. Suddenly, a B-rank tiger wolf appeared, and Li Yi reminded the students that they were soldiers and that believing in themselves would allow them to defeat the beast. He gave them power and then grabbed the beast with chains, instructing Luo to attack from the front. Luo struck at full power but realized he had barely scratched its skin. The other students fired arrows while protecting themselves with shields as the beast broke free from the chains. Li praised their teamwork and told Luo to fully use his skill, explaining that the blade could transform into any weapon form that gave him the advantage. Luo understood and rushed forward, but the beast caught his weapon. Using his magic technique metal forging, Luo trapped the beast, and Li slammed it onto the ground with great force. Everyone watched in awe and realized they had really done it. A student commented that the beast suddenly did not seem so scary anymore, and Li declared that it was now time for their counterattack. Luo hesitated and asked if Li was truly not coming with them, but Wu Hao sneered and said that if they wanted to die they could go ahead, because he was staying where he was. He firmly believed his father would send someone to save him. Li cut the discussion short and urged everyone to move, saying that the more time they wasted, the more danger the surviving students would face. Luo still felt uneasy and asked if they were really going to leave Wu Hao behind, but Li Yi answered coldly that they were not abandoning him, because he had already abandoned everyone else out of his own cowardice. Elsewhere, a group of soldiers ran into a beast, and their captain quickly identified it as part of the beast's race. He ordered the defense squad to move up and form an attack formation, while the advanced squad launched their assault. Explosions struck the beast, and the captain used roots to bind it, shouting for it to die. The soldiers anxiously asked if it had worked, but the beast broke free and charged again. The captain immediately ordered everyone to scatter. Bullets poured into the beast, yet the soldiers shouted in panic when they realized the shots were useless. The captain then yelled for them to run and leave him behind. As the beast roared, Li suddenly appeared behind it, praised the captain for doing well as an instructor, and decapitated the beast in a single strike, saying it would be a shame for him to die there. The captain was stunned and wondered if Li was in A rank after witnessing him kill a B rank so easily. Luo quickly introduced Li to Instructor Yang and said he had been sent by the military to assist them. Li immediately asked Yang how many students were still left in the academy. Yang replied that aside from the 9 with him, there had been 63 others, but he was no longer sure of their situation. Li grabbed him by the collar in anger and questioned how he could be unsure at a time like this, saying he should have been with the other students. Yang tried to explain but could not finish his words. The scene then shifted to Director Wu's side, where a boy praised him and said his plan of sending people out to distract the beasts had bought them valuable time. Another boy felt it was too extreme, but the first one snapped back and asked why he had not gone out himself if he cared so much. Director Wu stopped their argument and explained that dividing the students into 10-man squads and sending them out had been a desperate move meant to protect the command department students, whom he called the future generals and the hope of the academy. The boys expressed gratitude and promised to repay his kindness in the future. At that moment, Li arrived and angrily exposed the truth, saying that Wu had done all of this just to save these cowardly people, sacrificing 60 students in 6 squads so they could later repay his so-called kindness when they rose to power. A boy angrily demanded to know who Li was and said it was not his place to speak. Instructor Yang stepped forward and coldly pointed out to Director Wu that he had set up quite a scheme. The boy was shocked to see Yang and questioned why he was not guarding the perimeter as ordered, accusing him of disobeying commands by bringing people back. Director Wu then noticed Luo He and Song Kui and asked why they were there, reminding them that he had assigned them to accompany his son Wu Hao for training in an off-campus C-rank alternate dimension. Luo calmly explained that Wu Hao claimed he was too tired and stayed in the dormitory, refusing to go. Director Wu's expression darkened as he demanded to know where Wu Hao was now. Luo answered that Wu Hao had refused to come with them, so they had no choice but to leave him at the West District Gymnasium. Wu exploded in rage and shouted that they had abandoned his son, accusing them of committing a serious violation of military discipline and even a crime. He moved to strike Luo, but Li stepped in and blocked the punch. Li coldly accused Wu of being a B-rank advanced who had failed to protect his students, and instead sent them to their deaths. Wu roared back that it had all been a strategic necessity, and questioned who Li thought he was to challenge him. Li replied sharply that his own order to abandon Wu Hao had also been a strategic necessity. Director Wu hesitated as he sensed Li Yi's strength and realized he was in A rank, especially one so young, possibly from a powerful family, and decided it was better not to clash with him directly. He then ordered Instructor Yang to take his men and follow him to rescue Wu Hao at once. Li immediately countered by giving his own orders, telling Instructor Yang to use the radio to contact all students and have them gather there immediately, and instructing Luo to collect every usable gun and all the ammunition he could find. Instructor Yang and Luo answered firmly and carried out the orders. Wu angrily questioned what right Li had to give orders and warned that gathering so many people would alert the beasts outside. Li coldly replied that his patience was limited and told Wu to shut his mouth if he did not want to die. He then turned to the students and said they all understood the danger outside. He told them they had two choices, either hide there and pray the beasts never found them, or pick up weapons and fight their way out with him to carve a path of survival for themselves and their comrades. Wu mocked the idea and claimed the weapons were useless against B-rank beasts, accusing Li of sending the students to their deaths. Li immediately proved him wrong by attacking Wu and calmly asking him to test whether the weapons truly did not work. Wu was shocked when the bullet pierced his defense, unable to believe its hardness. Li explained that Luo he had coated all the weapons with special metal, and as long as everyone worked together, killing the beasts outside would not be a problem. The students burst into excitement and shouted that they could finally fight back, saying they were tired of feeling helpless and eager to counterattack and break out. Wu shouted in fury and reminded Li that he worked for the city lord, questioning whether Li dared to treat him this way. Li replied coldly that Wu should be grateful his B-rank strength was still useful to the students, otherwise he would have thrown him outside long ago to be fed to the beasts. Li said he would lead a squad as the vanguard to clear the way and reduce danger as much as possible, while the rest of the students were told to follow their combat training and maintain squad formation as they moved. He activated his magic technique Soul Protection, and a screen appeared showing that soul protection had been acquired and that his combat power and defense were boosted. Li reminded everyone that this was real combat and not a drill, warning them there would be no second chances. He then entrusted Instructor Yang with bringing up the rear together with the students. In his heart, Li realized that soul protection did not work on people who held ill intentions toward him. He then coldly assigned Director Wu, as a B rank, to lead the attack group for the students and face the beasts head-on, making it clear that he was not asking for opinions. Li told him this was his chance to atone for his sins and warned that if he dared to desert or try anything suspicious, he would kill him without hesitation. Elsewhere, soldiers were alarmed by the loud noise and thought it sounded like a company-level battle, quickly sending a nearby drone to investigate. When they checked the feed, they were stunned to see students fighting beasts in an organized formation, with combat power and defense far higher than expected. The beasts were clearly being pushed back. Their shock deepened when they recognized Li as the one leading them, unable to understand who he really was. Back on the battlefield, Li calmly called out the positions of beasts at 4 o'clock and 10 o'clock and handed them to Instructor Yang. Yang immediately ordered the squads to split up and attack. Gunfire erupted as bullets poured into the beasts. Li then warned everyone to brace for impact before leaping high into the air. With a decisive sword slash, he wiped out everything in his path, and the resulting blast shook the ground violently. Luo felt shocked as he watched the battlefield and thought it was unbelievable that so many beasts had been taken down in an instant, secretly admiring Li and wishing he had that kind of power. Li then asked Qin Tian if he had already reached a rank. Qin Tian explained that the gap between B rank and A rank was huge and told him that with his weak physique, it was impossible to cross it so fast. He said Li was only able to deal with the B rank tiger wolves so easily because of the shadow enhancement, and warned that against a real A rank beast, Li would still need his help. Li calmly replied that once he escorted the students to safety, he would come back and try his luck against an A-rank tiger wolf. After clearing the open area, he ordered everyone to rest for a while. Soon after, a soldier rushed over with bad news, reporting that Director Wu and the command department students had disappeared and might have gone toward the West District Gymnasium to look for Wu Hao. Instructor Yang asked if they should go support them, but Li rejected the idea and said the route to the West District required crossing a dangerous open field, so they would stick to the nearest and safest path. At the same time, Director Wu led his group away from the main force, brushing off concerns by claiming that staying with Li was the real danger. He believed the main group was drawing the beasts away and felt confident since they had not encountered any beasts along the way. However, the mood suddenly changed when a terrified soldier spotted a large number of beasts ahead, including higher-ranking ones. Wu was stunned and tried to reason that Li Yi's group had passed through earlier, but then realized the beasts might have gathered there after hunting. With no way to bypass the area to reach the gymnasium, a soldier suggested retreating, but Wu firmly refused. Li calmly assessed the situation and said they were still 3 kilometers away from the military rescue team. He noted that there were fewer beasts in the area and that the terrain favored them, so he decided they would rest for 15 minutes before moving again. Suddenly, a violent blast shook the ground, and Instructor Yang immediately demanded a report from the sentry, suspecting grenade explosions. A soldier hurriedly reported that someone was throwing grenades in their direction and confirmed it was Director Wu and his group. The explosions were drawing a large number of beasts over, including suspected ranks. Another soldier praised the director and said he had cleverly lured the beasts away. Director Wu coldly stated that he only hoped they could hold out longer and buy his group more time. As beasts began entering the barrier, Li quickly judged that there were over a dozen B ranks and 2 A ranks nearby. He explained that if they stayed hidden, they would be discovered sooner or later, and forcing their way through was impossible. He decided that the only option was for him to go out alone and draw the beast's attention, ordering Instructor Yang to lead the students and retreat immediately. Luo protested and said it was too dangerous, offering to fight alongside him. Li firmly refused and told them all to evacuate, explaining that he could not guarantee he would draw every beast away. He placed the responsibility of protecting the students on them and reassured everyone that if he was alone, he was confident he could escape safely even if he could not win. From a distant observation point, staff stared at the drone feed in shock and confirmed the presence of a rank beasts, urgently notifying headquarters to send a rank support. One man watched Li on the screen and could not believe what he was seeing, questioning whether that kid was truly planning to face multiple rank beasts alone, and calling him completely insane. On the battlefield, Li clashed with the beasts as they blocked his attacks and struck back, only to be stopped again. Qin Tian appeared and casually pointed out that there were 2 A-rank tiger wolves, asking if Li could handle them. Li replied with a grin and teased that Qin Tian looked even more excited than he was, guessing his hands were itching for a fight. Qin Tian scoffed and claimed he was only worried Li would get beaten. Li laughed it off, told him to beg if he wanted help, and remarked that everyone had arrived. He then said they should deal with the annoying ones first and activated his shadow domain. Instructor Yang urgently ordered everyone to retreat at once and told them to keep moving together. Luo suddenly pointed behind them and told the instructor to look, saying that what they saw looked like a skill released by Mr. Li. Yang was stunned as he watched the scene and wondered if this was truly Mr. Li's real power, questioning who Li really was. On the battlefield, Qin Tian calmly told Li that he would handle the 2 A-rank beasts and asked Li to deal with the B ranks. Li replied that it sounded good, but those beasts clearly had no intention of following Qin Tian's plan. Qin Tian then suggested turning it into a competition to see who could kill more B-rank beasts first. Li immediately agreed, and the 2 of them charged into battle. Li cut down many beasts in quick succession and casually remarked that it looked like a tie. Qin Tian argued back and claimed he had struck first, while Li pointed out that it was 1 for each of them and told him not to steal his target. Qin Tian chose a larger beast instead, and Li mocked him by saying size did not matter since he could not eat them anyway. Qin Tian laughed it off and said that at least his opponent looked bigger, though he admitted he had not expected the large beast to be so agile. As they fought, Li noticed that the battle had already intensified on Qin Tian's side and questioned why he had not made his move yet. He then released his mana and decided to test the beast's strength first. The beast attacked by firing mana from its mouth, but Li dodged the strike. When it attacked again, Li blocked it and realized that the electric current carried a paralytic effect. Qin Tian warned him not to push himself if he could not win and offered to take over. Li calmly replied that he was only warming up and told him not to worry, saying the real fun was just beginning. Qin Tian told Li that he looked forward to his performance, and Li replied calmly that the feeling was mutual, advising him not to push himself if he could not win. Qin Tian then rushed forward and declared that Li should watch closely, saying this was what a ranked combat looked like. He slashed his sword at the beast and mocked it, confident that it could not block his attack. The beast opened its mouth and fired a mana beam, but Qin Tian blocked it easily and scolded the creature for daring to challenge him. He then formed a huge shadow foot and slammed it down, only for the beast to create a shield around itself. Qin Tian sneered and said he wanted to see how long that shell could last, repeatedly stomping on the shield with overwhelming force. Li watched the fight and thought that Qin Tian's bad habit of stepping on enemies had returned, yet he could clearly feel that Qin Tian's control over shadow energy was far more refined than his own. Just then, another beast attacked Li, but he blocked it by using Shadow Jaunt and firmly stated that its opponent was him. Outside the battlefield, a soldier suddenly shouted that someone had come out. Director Wu stepped forward and asked who the commander was. Gao Ao immediately reported himself as Student Second Lieutenant Gao Ao. Director Wu acknowledged him and praised him for reaching such a rank only a few years after graduation. Gao Ao asked if Director Wu understood the situation inside, and Wu explained that the area was filled with beasts, including a ranks. He said he had barely escaped after leading the students in a desperate resistance, and that his strength was limited, allowing him to save only 3 students while the rest were left behind. Gao Ao comforted him and said he had done his best. Another man supported this and said they would have died without the director. Soon after, a soldier rushed over and reported that dozens more students had escaped and urgently requested reinforcements from headquarters. He added that Mr. Lee was holding back 2A rank beasts alone to ensure everyone could retreat safely and stressed that there was no time to waste. Director Wu clenched his teeth and muttered angrily, questioning why those people had not died. Wu Hao nervously asked his father what they should do and whether the survivors would speak out. Director Wu replied coldly that silencing them would be easy, but the real problem was Li, and he declared with hatred that Li had to die.